Okay, now that I'm actually recording this, let me start by saying that the stuff going down in Ukraine is by no means any good. It's insane and terrible that it's gone on for any period of time. But I don't know, I just kind of saw this being over in a week's time, and it's still going on, and that just baffles me. So, if you're watching this live and you have any spare cash, in the description of the stream, I put links to two articles that both have lists of charities you can donate to. If you have any spare cash, please consider donating to one of those charities, or multiple charities if you want. And yeah, just help out. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully I've put links to those articles that list the charities in the description of the YouTube archive. If I haven't, please yell at me in the comments to do that. Anyway, with all that done, I'm going to go back to being a distraction. What's up, everybody? It's CS Nazo, and welcome back to Great Ace Attorney. In the last part was the first trial day for the trial for Baron von Zeeks. I almost said von Karma, but no, it's Van Zeeks. Von Zeeks? Van Zeeks? I don't remember. And yeah, with this stream, we're going to be starting the second day of investigation. So yeah, let's start. I still can't... great start. I still can't quite believe what just happened. I know. I inquired with the bailiff after the court session was adjourned. And it seems Mr. Vigil was taken to hospital to recover. Right. 10 years ago now. Mr. Vigil's attempted to commit suicide by jumping out of the window of the prison governor's office. Also, if you need any mental help, please do not be afraid to go look for, to seek out help. Reach out for help if you need it. But ever since then, he's completely blocked the memory of those events from his mind. Nobody knew his secret. Not his family, not even the man himself. But I forced it into the open. Was it wrong of me to do that? Did I overstep the mark? I wonder. Runo! Let me see if I can get this voice back. I'm very sorry. Oh, Iris! You were miles away! God, right off the bat! You were miles away! Anyway, I brewed a fresh pot of soothing tea for you. Oh, thank you. You and Susie have had an exhausting day so far, haven't you? Oh. Thank you, Iris. How thoughtful of you. Yeah, Susanna was just me, but a little more breathy. Do you happen to know where Mr. Sholmes is? When we came out of the courtroom back into the defendant's antechamber, he disappeared. Oh no, I don't know. He just suddenly sprang to his feet and left. All he said was, I must leave. Oh god, I have a tickle in my throat. I wonder if he's pursuing the mystery of Inspector Gregson's death. Well, you know what Hurley's always saying, don't you? There are mysteries in this world that should perhaps never be solved. For the construction of a solution comes only at the expense of the destruction of something else. What does that mean? He knows very well that when you open someone else's old wounds, you often open up your own too. But he just can't take his own advice and leave well alone. Solving mysteries is too important to him. So, that's so true. But that's what I like about Hurley, after all. I suppose that's a lot of great detective in some ways. So then, let's have tea, and then I'll give you a hand by shooting you in the face. Oh, do you have time, Iris? Yes, I finished this month's manuscript at last, with barely a day to spare before the deadline. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. A brand new story to read in the adventures of Herlock Sholmes. You know, I always hide Hurley's violin in the days before I have a deadline. You do? Poor Mr. Sholmes. I'm sure that's very wise, Iris. How sensible of you. Now then, my dear fellows, let's make a plan of action before we continue our investigation. Alright, the morning's trial. So, how did it go in the court this morning? In the court? Well, we still don't know the truth about what really happened, but one thing's increasingly clear. Lord Van Zieks definitely didn't do it. Oh, goody! Yes, that's right. We managed to uncover several new facts as well. Oh, really? Excuse me. And there was another development too. Kazuma. Yes, it's quite clear now. But Kazuma-sama is not himself. The way he's acting, it's almost as if he's possessed. I know. I mean, at the end of the proceedings earlier, he was like a bloodhound the way he was chasing down Mr. Vigil's forgotten past. He's not normally so mercilessly persistent. What's going on in his head, I wonder? I really need to sit down with Kazuma and try to understand what he's going through. The Reaper's innocence. If Gregson was really murdered the day before his body was discovered, then Lord Van Zieks has to be innocent, you see. What? The day before? Well, that should be easy enough to work out. Just by examining the corpse, surely. Yes, you would expect so, but curiously, no time of death was included in the autopsy report. That is curious. There are still unanswered questions about Lord Van Zieks, though, aren't there? Do you mean... Yes. I mean, what was he doing there on Fresno Street that day in the first place? Well, according to the man's testimony, he said he was investigating Inspector Gregson, didn't he? And it turns out that little room was actually the inspector's secret office. Ooh! That sounds like it has all the markings of a wonderfully devilish plot. But then, why was that notice board in there covered in all those particular papers? Papers about cases with a link to the Reaper. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about all this. Oh dear, that sounds more like something horribly devilish. So, what I think is going on with the curse of the Reaper of the Bailey, Lord Van Zieks does not know about this. He does not intend for it to happen. But someone who is an avid fan of Lord Van Zieks and believes he's always right, is going out there and basically killing everyone who gets declared innocent when he's involved in a trial. I think that's what's happening, and I think that might be who killed Gregson, because they were getting a little too close. I think the reason why Lestrade, I finally figured out it's Lestrade, I think why Gina has been safe is because she's literally a child, and the killer just doesn't have it in him to kill a literal child. So, well, not child, teenager, but you get the idea. Oh dear, that sounds more like something horribly devilish. We must start by looking into Inspector Gregson's moments of late. Gregson's movements. I never imagined I might have to be investigating an inspector's movements. Well, according to the entry in his diary, He was carrying out an incognito investigation of the Red-Headed League the day before his death. Oh, you mean he was doing the same as Hurley? Well, Mr. Sholmes was trying to apply, whereas the inspector was supposed to be investigating. I do wish it had been the other way around. Anyway, as it turns out, the inspector who went to investigate the Red-Headed League that day wasn't actually Gregson at all. It was Mr. Vigil, in possession of Gregson's identification. You know what that sounds like to me? Establishing an alibi. What? I mean, if that's what we're going for, I'm not entirely sure. Because there's the fact that we're now working on this theory that he was killed the day before. I mean, that is starting to add up, everything, whatever. Oh my, yes, you're absolutely right, Iris! But why would Gregson need an alibi? It would appear that the inspector had something to do with, that he wished to keep secret. I don't believe it. I always thought he was just a harmless lover of fish and chips. But perhaps they were seasoned with something a little more potent than salt and vinegar. I think perhaps we should try to move away from food analogies. Well, anyway, if Lord Van Zieks felt the need to investigate Gregson... Yes, I agree. We must try to find out what he knows. Mr. Vigil's condition. Vigil, you say? Isn't that the name of the lady who came to visit Hurley yesterday? That's right. To ask Mr. Sholmes if he would help her to find her missing husband. Only Mr. Sholmes completely passed the buck to us. Actually, didn't you say that Mr. Vigil had been taken to hospital? Do you know which one? Ah! It's St. Sinners! I'm starting to wonder if all the other hospitals in London have closed down. But that's amazing, Runo! You found the lady's husband already! Well, I suppose I have. By accident. And 10 years ago, when Mr. Vigil was chief warden at the prison, he was responsible for overseeing the professor's incarceration. No! So when the convict escaped, he was held responsible and immediately dismissed. Sometimes I really don't want to grow up. There's more. For 10 years after that, while he was ostensibly working as a peddler, he also had another secret job. He was paid by Gregson to be his stand-in, to impersonate the inspector. To impersonate Gregsy? But why? I have absolutely no idea. Jeannie was right. I'm starting to think all adults are up to no good now. Including you, Runo. I haven't paid anyone to impersonate me. That means he has ties to the professor and to Inspector Gregson, though. So I do think we ought to pay a visit to Mr. Vigil, don't you? Back to St. Sinners, then. Well, I think it's clear what we need to do, isn't it? Go to St. Sinners? Let us investigate, my dear fellows! Oh, Iris! You're more enthusiastic than usual today. If anyone has anything to hide, my special Wilson shooting iron will soon set them straight. That water pistol? It's stuff full of piping hot extra special blend of mine. I'm quite sure it'll be very effective. I'd better be careful not to hide anything. Well, it feels a little strange that Mr. Sholmes is nowhere to be seen, but still. Let's go and see what we can find out. Yes! Alright, where... Okay. Yeah, Mr. Vigil's hospital bed. 2nd of November. St. Sinners Hospital. Ward 3. Oh! Is he not here? These must be the patient's treatment notes. Let's see. Tendency to jump from windows. Remember to place cushion at base of wall outside. Aren't we a story up here from the ground? Aren't we a story up from the ground here? Oh dear. Poor Mr. Vigil. I can't help feeling that there's a better solution to the problem than a cushion. Finding something you'd lost isn't always a happy experience, it turns out. Pursuing the truth can be a very dark business sometimes, can it? Yes, I'm afraid it can. So that's his... Excuse me. That's his bed. And he's not here, so... To the prison! Let's talk to Van Zeeks. Lord Van Zeeks is reading. Look! He doesn't seem like he wants visitors, does he? But he must have noticed that we're here, surely. He hasn't, and if that's the case, then it's hilarious. If he straight up hasn't noticed us. Oh, damn it, he noticed us! What do you Nipponese want? That's no way to greet the lawyer who's trying his hardest to prove your innocence, is it? Perhaps not. Hmm? I apologize. So, what can I do for you, Mr. Naruto? Lord Van Zeeks, speaking earnestly. Oh, the fog will lift over London for the first time in months tomorrow. This does feel very, very strange. I must say, I was impressed. Oh, well, thank you. Not by you, by your fellow Nipponese, your prosecutor friend. Oh, I see, yes. It's sardonic, don't you think? For a man such as me, so loathing of the Nipponese, to be entirely at the mercy of the two of you. I suppose it's retribution for having played the part of the Reaper all these years. Played the part? Explain okay. The Reaper's identity. You once told me that you gladly allowed people to believe you were the Reaper, because it helped reduce the amount of serious crime that took place in London. If keeping quiet and playing the part benefits the cause, a cause I myself am committed to pursuing, then why would I choose to say anything? But the henchman of a criminal killed by the Reaper attacked you only the other day. And that was just the most recent of many attempts on your life, wasn't it? Someone is clearly profiting from your silence about all this. Someone is using you. Believe me, ever since the Reaper first appeared, I've been doing my utmost to expose him. Or rather, expose the organization. Ooh, okay. Ah! It's a whole organization? It's inconceivable that all those accidents were orchestrated by one man. No, the Reaper always appears to have very accurate information about the accused in each case, which can only mean that somebody at Scotland Yard is involved. Someone at... You can't mean... Is he implying that Gregson was the one who was killing all those people? It's taken me many years, but I finally identified the central figure in the Reaper organization. Tobias Gregson. No! No! Gregson? The Reaper? I mean, that would explain why he didn't go after Gina, because he knows she's innocent. Because, I mean, hell, he tried to fucking frame her for it. Gregson's secret. So, The reason you were investigating Inspector Gregson is because you intend to expose him as the Reaper? As I said, the Reaper of the Bailey is no single person. It's a highly secret organization with close ties to Scotland Yard. But there's no doubt that Gregson was a key member of that organization. So maybe someone else found out about this organization and, out of revenge, targeted Gregson and I guess decided to set up Van Zeke since he's partially responsible? I don't believe it. Excuse me, I'm very burpy today. I apologize for that.
Are you saying that are you saying that Gregsy, that he was behind all those awful criminals, meaning they're...
Gregson didn't do the dirty work himself.
Oh!
He was the tactician. His job was to covertly investigate the marks and plot their assassinations. In order to do that without arousing suspicion, he regularly needed a firm alibi. Which is where Mr. Vigil... Which is where Mr. Vigil came in, posing as the inspector. Vigil knows nothing of the Reaper, but the room he rents on Fresno Street was almost certainly the headquarters of the operation. Gregson would have met the assassin there for briefings. So we don't actually know who carried out the killings then. Actually, I do have a name.
You... What?
Well, if you can name the man, you have the true identity of the Reaper already then. Or, if I can name the woman. Huh? Miss Vigil? She's a young woman by the name of Asa Shin? I'm gonna screen cap that. Asa Shin. Potentially another... I want to say Japanese? I mean, it would go along with the theme. It would be weird if it was something else.
Wait, what?
Shin? Wait. Huh? She came to Japan posing as a visiting student and murdered John H. Wilson. Then, just when it seemed that diplomatic protection would help her escape Japan and conviction, the mysterious woman was herself murdered in a small summer beach hut. How many people... Well, then again, the answer to that would be 0, because Van Zeeks only showed up during the time Naruhodo was defending in England. And it's been a while. Was Ashley Graydon the one who killed McGinnis? Was he the one that did that? I've played the game, I just don't remember. That would make sense. And I think that is what happened. The mysterious woman was herself murdered in a small summer beach hut. And that woman was actually the Reaper of the Bailey? So, what did Wilson do? Mr. Naruhodo, this perhaps isn't the place to discuss... No, of course not. We can't mention it here. The fact is that she killed Dr. John H. Wilson. Because Iris doesn't know, and it's very likely that the man was her father. That's a shin. I should let Father know at once. Yes, I agree. Prosecutor Asuki. Kazuma, is it? Hold on. I'm gonna do the objection again. Objection! Okay, that's as close as I can get to Van Zeke's voice that he has in game. That's the closest I can get. This is the closest I can get right here. I sound like a 40-year-old chain smoker, which somehow seems off. Kazuma, isn't it? Kazuma Asuki. You say he's a friend of yours? My best friend. He's the whole reason I got to come to Britain. It was all on his merits. I have nothing but respect for him. Yes, I understand that only the very best students are selected for such opportunities. And I had a fine demonstration of how sharp he is in the proceedings earlier today. He missed nothing. In fact, his flawless performance very much reminded me of his father, Genshin Asogi, the professor. It's true that the aristocracy at the time was the root of numerous grave societal problems. They were abusing their power, playing with the common man like pawns in politics, in economics, in war. In many ways, Asuki was carving out a canker from society that we British couldn't deal with ourselves. I see. But that's precisely why it makes no sense. Clint Van Zeeks was a noble and upstanding man. He wasn't corrupt. Why did that damn Nipponese have to go and take my brother's life? In spite of having once saved mine. What? He saved your life? How did that happen? Saving your life. It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. What was to be the professor's final strike had sent a wave of panic through the capital. So Clint Van Zeeks had already been killed at this point then. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. Of course, at that point, I had no idea of the true nature of the man on my side. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep. You're coming with us. We were surrounded. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scars. Clint was not only from noble heritage, he was a brilliant prosecutor as well. The scum of London hated the sight of him, and they had no sympathy for his younger brother either. I'd been targeted several times before already. Yeah, it's Van Zeeks alright. We got him. I could hear them murmuring amongst themselves. I knew they were after me. And just when I thought my time had come. If I let them kill you, Clint would never forgive me. It was Asogi's voice, just a whisper in my ear. After that, I don't remember exactly what happened. The next thing I knew, there was a silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He shielded me. Two days later, they arrested him. On suspicion of being London's most notorious mass murderer ever, the Professor. How awful for you. All at once, I lost the brother I revered and the foreign friend I held in such high regard. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zeeks. That's the end of my miserable tale. I never thought I'd recount it to anyone. Well, thank you for confiding in me. The Professor, the Reaper, and Inspector Gregson. I wonder just how intimately related they all are. I still can't quite believe that Gregson was essentially the Reaper, giving assassination orders to Jeziel Brett. Mr. Naruhodo, let's go and inform my father. I'm sure our government will want to hear about this new information.
Oh, that means I get to meet your daddy, Susie! Hooray!
Yes, alright. Let's head back to the Great Waterloo Hotel then.
You think maybe we should take Iris back, like, to her suite?
Because, someone tells me this is where she's gonna find out about her dad. And, I don't think she's gonna be... I mean... It's weird. On the one hand, like, I feel like they should have told her sooner. On the other hand, I mean, we're already this far in. Excuse me. Excuse me for that yawn there. Oh, didn't mean to bring up the court record.
I thought it yesterday, and I think it again today. This place is so princely.
It's a wild guess, but I have a feeling you'll think the same tomorrow, too.
My tea has a finer fragrance than whatever they're serving in the tea room here, though. Wouldn't you say?
Excuse me. Ah, look who we have here. This is an unexpected pleasure.
Ah, Father! Oh, this is your daddy, Susie? How lovely!
What a charming young lady. And you are? Ah, really? So you're the author of The Adventures of Sherlock Sholmes, are you?
That's me, Iris Wilson, at your service, sir. Susie's been such a wonderful friend to me over the last year, you know?
Well, Miss Wilson, I must say I read your work regularly and with much interest.
Iris actually lives with Mr. Sholmes, you know, Father.
Is that so? Well, perhaps that goes some way to explain the bright look in your eyes. You wouldn't be smiling so airily if you knew just how bright she is, believe me. Now then, young Naruhodo, it was a pleasure seeing you in action. As an invitee to of the symposium, I was allowed to observe from the gallery after I twisted some arms. And I must say, it was a truly exemplary performance. Oh, well, thank you very much. Although I'm fairly sure you omitted by Kazuma on the end there. Hold on, I have to look at that again. No, please don't misunderstand. It was you who impressed me.
Really?
Yeah, Naruhodo has a very easily read face. You didn't miss a step against Sasuke, and we all know how capable he is. Really, to have matured into such a fine defense lawyer in less than a year is quite extraordinary. It's very kind of you to say so, and really nice to hear. What I saw in court today confirmed what I'd been hoping for. The favor I mentioned yesterday, Naruhodo, I trust you haven't forgotten? I have, actually. Oh, no, you didn't mention something, didn't you? But first, we have something to report, Father. Of course. Shall we take tea while we discuss matters further? I wonder where Judge Jigoku has to go. Ah, he has got to. About the Reaper.
Father, do you know about the so-called Reaper of the Bailey?
I've heard rumors. Some members of the judiciary explained it all to me yesterday. Of course, when I was a visiting student here in London, the Reaper was yet to emerge. Right. He didn't appear until after that case, when the visiting students had already returned home. Lord Van Zieks, who was in the dock today. That was Beric, the younger brother of Clint Van Zieks, I believe.
That's right. And he's known throughout London as the Reaper, as you've heard. But the truth is, it wasn't him behind all of those mysterious deaths. It was somebody else.
I see. So what you're saying is, there's been a professional killer at work here? Exactly. Someone by the name of Asa Shin, in fact. I beg your pardon? Did you say Asa Shin?
You mean that Jezebel Brett woman who was responsible for killing my great friend? Oh no! A friend of yours was killed? And here we go. Professor Mikatopa, I think perhaps we shouldn't discuss this right now. Because the friend the professor is talking about is Dr. John H. Wilson. And that's not something we want Iris to find out about. Not like this, anyway. Dr. Wilson's death. I've just remembered something. Biscuits! This hotel has the most delicious looking biscuits.
That was rather out of the blue.
She's doing this deliberately. I think I'll go and see if I can purchase some. I wonder, would you like to come too, Iris? Oh yes! You just try to leave me behind.
So that young girl is called Iris Wilson, is she?
Yes, that's right.
And she's the author of all those adventure stories starring the great Detective Sholmes? But the name credited author isn't Iris. But the name of the credited author isn't Iris, is it? It's Dr. John H. Wilson.
Yes, I know. That's the name of her father, you see.
Her father? Dr. John H. Wilson. I was deeply indebted to the man for all the kindness he showed me during my time in London. That's why I was keen to reciprocate and invite him to the Imperial Yuma University 4 years ago. But he was murdered last year by Jezebel Brett. Excuse me.
Why? Why would the hand of the Reaper stretch all the way to Japan? Iris knows nothing about that case, but it seems very likely that the victim, Dr. Wilson, was her father.
Well, I can't say that we ever spoke about his family, so I don't know if he had a daughter or not. But I think I can say with some certainty that he was never the great detective's partner.
So, it could have been another Dr. Wilson, you think?
Well, John and Wilson are both common names after all.
Yeah, that's something I probably should have thought about now that I think about it.
So it's probably best not to mention this to the young lady until we can be sure.
That's what we thought. Oh, okay, so that's why they were doing it. We're back! With cinnamon biscuits! Oh, they smell delicious, Iris! I think cinnamon will go very well with the tea they serve here. Don't you, Susie? Yes, I'm sure you're right, Iris.
Judge Jigoku.
I haven't seen Judge Jigoku for a while, have you?
Guilty! Ha 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 ha!
But that guilty is still ringing in my ears.
No, now you mention it, I haven't seen him since this morning either. I suppose, since the symposium's opening was postponed, he'll have gone to explore at the Great Exhibition.
That reminds me of something you mentioned yesterday. About Judge Jigoku having once been in the dock himself?
Oh yes, it was all tied up with that accursed trial.
The closed trial of Kazuma's father.
Seshiro was trying to mitigate Genshin's guilt, so he took to the stand to testify. But he got a little carried away and, actually managed to break the witness stand.
Oh my!
He also said some contemptuous words about the British Empire, for which he was charged.
Oh dear, although it's worryingly easy to imagine him doing that.
Well, it was all alright in the end. He was acquitted and we returned home to Japan together.
Thank goodness.
Oh yes, talking of Seshiro, I have a copy of the photograph we all took together here yesterday. Please, add it to the court record.
Oh, what a lovely picture!
It certainly seems to shout, we've arrived in Britain. The commemorative, it really has. Everyone is smiling except Jigoku and Ryunosuke. I mean, Ryunosuke makes sense. He's a nervous wreck through and through. When is he ever not nervous? But Jigoku, why isn't he smiling? What is this thing on Mikotoba's tie? This is gonna come up in court at some point. I just know it. Excuse me. None of us had any idea what was coming when we took that, did we? No, that's so true. The favor. Favor. So you mentioned a favor that you'd like to ask me. Ask me with a K, not with no S. No, I mean no. I think I'm forgetting how to speak English. Well, this fateful trial that you're fighting, one way or another, it will be over before long. And when it is, I'd like you to accompany me back to Japan. You want me to do... What? Father! What's the meaning of this? Now, Susato, you should understand. You've seen how our courts work firsthand. Japan's judicial system is in its infancy, especially when it comes to defense. Oh, you mean... The Supreme Court of Judicature is in desperate need of a good defense lawyer. As soon as possible. Really quite urgently, in fact. But I've not even been in London a year yet. I've read all of Susato's reports. I'm well aware of your extraordinary talents. And having seen you in action with my own eyes earlier today, there's no question. You, Naruhodo, are precisely the man our country needs. So, you'd be leaving then, Runo? But then, what am I supposed to do, Father? You came here to serve as Asugi's judicial assistant. Oh, yes, she's supposed to be Kazuma's assistant. Our government is still in the process of deciding how best to deal with his situation, though. You've always chosen your path, Susato, and I trust your judgment. In this matter also. Father! Please, the pair of you, don't look so downcast. It's merely a suggestion, you understand. A hope, if I'm honest, but I won't force you. All I ask is that you consider it, and come to a decision by the time this trial concludes. Yes, alright. You won't leave, will you, Runo? The thought hadn't even crossed my mind. Up until now, I've just been trying to do what I believe to be Kazuma's will. But it turns out, he's still alive, so where does that leave me? Well, if you'll excuse me now, I need to telegram government ministers and the Japanese police with this information about Asashin. Of course, Father. Thank you. Well, I think you should also say that we don't have any evidence. It's just, you know, our client has been investigating and that's his belief, and that we should maybe look into it a little bit further. Also, installment only has one L in it. Well, installment's supposed to have two L's in it, but here it only has one. Whatever. I look forward to next month's installment, Miss Wilson. Oh, good! And please, do come to Baker Street sometime, won't you? We'd love to entertain you. I would be delighted. The best of luck for tomorrow, Mr. Naruhodo. And give my suggestion your full consideration, won't you? Yes, I will. Going back home? You know, Kazuma-sama has always meant a great deal to my father. I'm sure he'd love the chance to meet with him and talk to him about all of this. Yes, no doubt. Asashin. Of course, it's so obvious. How
How could I have neglected to consider the possibility before now? Ah,
Mr. Sholmes! Hurley? Where have you been?
why, I joined you all for tea, of course. What an extraordinary question.
He was here the entire time, we just didn't notice.
I have mastered the art of standing so perfectly still that I become invisible.
I didn't notice you at all.
No matter, no matter. Anyway, to more pressing concerns. Mr. Naruhodo.
Oh, yes?
I must dispatch a telegram to your country at once. It is a matter of much urgency.
To Japan, you mean?
Tell me, to whom can I entrust the task? Quickly now, who?
Well... My father has just now left to send a telegram to the Imperial Police Bureau of Japan himself.
I see. Well, he looked reliable enough for a bearded fellow.
Bearded? I think he has a mustache, definitely. I don't think he has a... Yeah, he doesn't have a beard. He has a mustache, not a beard. There's a difference.
There's not a moment to lose. Kindly ask your trusty, unshaven father to see this ascent.
I will, but what is it? I can see Herlock Sholmes on there.
No questions at this time, if you please, Mr. Sato. All we can do is pray. Now, for once, my deduction is awry.
Doesn't that imply that your deductions are normally correct, Mr. Sholmes? Which isn't exactly...
Now then! You may be surprised to learn that I am a very busy man. I certainly have no time to hide behind settees and eavesdrop on other people's conversations.
So that's what joining us for tea meant.
I leave the sending of this in your hands, then, my dear fellows.
Is it in the court record? Can I read it? I'm sorry. Wait a minute, Mr. Sholmes. He just sort of ran off, didn't he? At quite a pace. And left the unpaid bill for his tea behind, too. I must catch up with Father at the telegram office at once. And I'll run and call us a cab. Straight away. It's not in the court record. We can't read it. No! And there was me thinking everyone would be clamoring to pay Mr. Sholmes' bill.
Well, I'm not doing it.
Alright, we're getting text, so he's got to be here by this point. This is the ward where Mr. Vigil was brought, apparently. To be frank, I'm a little worried about seeing him again. The lawyer. Hello again. Are you feeling better now, Mr. Vigil? Yes, thank you. Somewhat better. I'm so sorry to have caused you to... I mean, it was because of me. If I hadn't exposed your secret and forced you to remember things you obviously tried to forget. The prosecutor was here until a few moments ago, too. You just missed him. Oh! Cosmo beat us to it. He said much of the same as you. He was very apologetic. But the truth is, I brought all this upon myself. Please, don't think like that. Keeping it from Evie, my wife, all these years, I've carried such a sense of guilt. But that's not the worst of it. Over time, I obviously came to deceive myself as well. You mean, about your dismissal? Looking back now, I'm beginning to think that perhaps Inspector Gregson didn't stumble across me by accident at all. I mean, he compensated me so generously for acting as a stand-in. He was clearly concerned for my well-being and doing what he could to help. So perhaps Gregson knew exactly what had become Mr. Vigil all along then. I'm sure that this is just a search for 10 years of lies and deception, but... It wasn't me that helped the professor escape 10 years ago! It wasn't me! I swear it! I swear it's true! Oh, Mr. Vigil. I'm sure you'd rather not dredge up even more from your past at this time, but if possible, could you tell us exactly what really happened? I want to. I need to get all this off my chest. I want someone to tell me what I should have done. Converse. Gregson's request. Inspector Gregson was obviously engaged in a special operation of some sort. He was investigating something that even Scotland Yard couldn't know about. Details of the Reaper's marks, yes. Excuse me. It was when he had to carry out those investigations that I would take his identification and impersonate him. You pretend to be the inspector and carry out investigations on his behalf? Oh no, never! A common street peddler couldn't possibly carry out a proper police investigation. All I would do is go to the specified location and make a little hoo-ha. Just something to leave an impression, so everyone there would think a detective called Gregson was here. So, that's what you were doing on the day prior to the incident? Yes, he asked me to make an appearance at the park on Lime Street for the Red-Headed League event. So as usual, I flashed the inspector's identification around and was very vocal about my presence. But then you were taken prisoner by those red-headed fraudsters! Yes. So, you would always make a point of showing Gregson's identification and generally being loud? That's what the inspector asked me to do, yes. That's one way of becoming a legendary detective, I suppose. Not a good one, though. And as you know, I suffered this bruising around my neck at their hands. But the following day, they kept their word and released me, without returning the inspector's identification to you, however. We had arranged to meet in the Fresno Street room at 5 that day, so I could report back to the inspector. But at the agreed time, that's when I heard the gunshot. The prison escape. I hate this. Excuse me. It was at midnight on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. That was the time scheduled for the execution. But the professor's execution never actually took place, did it? Or rather, the execution itself must have been used to effect the plan of escape. I hardly dare to imagine what a chilling plan it was. Barclay was renowned for being the highest security prison in the country. Everything that went in or out of the place was searched multiple times. But there was one notable exception. Or rather, one notable loophole. Something that was never questioned. I have a feeling I know what that loophole was now. The coffins into which the bodies of the executed convicts were placed, correct? Yes. Once the coroner had confirmed the death of a condemned convict, the body was taken in its coffin for immediate burial in Lowgate Cemetery, just behind the prison. The chief warder first had to sign the necessary papers. And after that, no member of staff was permitted to touch the coffin containing the body again. When executions took place, only the executioner and the coroner were permitted inside the chamber. I would wait in the adjacent room for word that the condemned convict was dead. On that occasion, once I had that confirmation, I went into the mortuary to find a lone coffin as usual. The procedure was that I would sign the paperwork, having checked the coffin, then nail it shut. But for some reason that day, the coffin was already nailed shut. No! I didn't think anything of it at the time. I assumed that my deputy must have checked the coffin and nailed it shut before I arrived. So, you mean the coffin contained... Yes, I can only imagine that Asagi, having escaped his execution somehow, was alive inside the coffin. The coffin was then taken out through the main gates and deposited in Lowgate Cemetery. Presumably there wouldn't have been enough air inside to breathe for long. So in the early hours following the burial, somebody dug up the coffin again to set Genshin free. But in the end, he was fatally shot in the graveyard anyway. What on earth really happened in Logate Cemetery that night, I wonder? I'm afraid I really don't know. All I can say with certainty are two things. Asagi couldn't possibly have escaped that way without help from somebody working in the prison. And that somebody was not me. The convict, Asagi. Obviously you knew the man then? The professor, I mean? Genshin Asogi? Yes, I remember him well, in fact. Would you mind telling us what you know? Well, having been condemned to death as he was, any contact I had with the man was short, obviously. After that trial, which was carried out behind closed doors, attended only by elite members of the judiciary, they called for his execution to be carried out at the earliest possible opportunity. The outcome of the trial was set from the beginning, wasn't it? It was a time of delicate diplomacy when Britain and Japan were in the process of signing an important treaty. That meant that this potentially destabilizing case had to be dealt with swiftly and discreetly. The man had less than a week in total. As I was the chief warder, I oversaw his short stay in the cells until his final hour. Excuse me. I remember being struck deeply by his noble character and incredible resilience. What do you mean exactly? He was a killer of many men, but he was always quiet and polite. He was a gentleman, a man of intellect. In fact, I couldn't bring myself to believe what he'd done, so I asked him one day, "Those 5 members of the aristocracy whose lives were taken, were you really responsible?" "I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes." So he killed someone, but whether or not it was those 5 guys is another question entirely. Is that what the 5th case is? Was Genshin Asogi, or Asagi, or however it's pronounced, was he really the professor, that serial killer? Or were the only people he killed the people who were trying to get Barrack? Because I can see him killing those guys. He had his hand on his sword in the picture. Is that the 5th case? Whether or not Sogi actually killed that guy? The following day, the closed trial took place, and the verdict was no surprise. Guilty. That night, when he was brought back to his cell, I saw something. Something unusual. Something unusual? What? The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi. Asogi's will. Why is it that whenever I'm referring to Kazuma, I say Asagi, but when I'm referring to Genshin, it's Asogi? As I said, it was on the night following his trial after he'd been found guilty. I was doing the rounds of the cells, and when I looked into Asagi's, I noticed that he seemed to have a sheet of paper in his hand. Ah! His last will and testament, then, presumably. As soon as he noticed me, he hurriedly shoved it behind his back. But why did you find that so unusual? Isn't it normal for a man to pen a will when he knows his death is nigh? Yes, that's true, but there were special conditions to Asagi's incarceration, you see. What sort of conditions? Well, even though he was held in a cell designed for condemned inmates, he was allowed to keep his personal effects with him, with one exception. His sword. He obviously wouldn't be allowed to have his sword. Really? Well, actually, that's more to the point proving that I don't know. I'm not gonna say it because I think it's just gonna come out bad. Fuck it, I think I've already hinted at it. My suspicion is that if Atsugi would have killed anyone, he would have done it with a sword, not a dog. Where did he even get the dog? Where did he even get the dog? That's kind of a reference to JoJo. He was allowed his stings? That is unusual, certainly. Of course, he'd been convicted of killing 5 members of the aristocracy. But at the same time, he was a guest in our country from the Empire of Japan. The powers that be were determined that his final days shouldn't be needlessly uncomfortable. And what was the exception? And what was the exception you mentioned for the personal effects he was allowed? His sword. That's the point. He wasn't permitted to have writing materials. Wait, so he was allowed to have his sword, but he wasn't allowed pen and paper? Specifically, no pens or paper. Oh, that seems backwards. So, he was prevented from leaving any written record of what had happened in... Excuse me. Yes, that was the long and short of it. I have no idea where he obtained that paper. Any writing materials would have been confiscated from him upon his incarceration. As I said, he hid the paper behind his back, and then he pleaded with me. What did you just hide behind your back? Please turn a blind eye. This is my lifeline. But you know it's against the rules. You're the only person who's seen. If you just agree to keep quiet. Alright then, but what's on that paper? The last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. With the exception of my literal sword. How can a will be a weapon? So I decided to pretend I'd seen nothing, and I let him keep his will. But then later, it just seemed to vanish without a trace. What? What do you mean it vanished? It would seem that isn't the end of the story of this mysterious will. The will's disappearance. I was the only person who saw Azuki's will, but somehow it disappeared? It was after Azuki's execution, which was actually an elaborate jailbreak. The warders gathered up Asogi's possessions that were in his cell. They were all to be sent back to his family home in Japan, you see. Poor Kazuma-sama. And you're saying that it wasn't anywhere to be found among his personal effects. So is that what Asogi was looking for, his father's will? Or was it really just to confirm whether or not his father was the professor? The will, I mean. That's right. Though I didn't search through them myself. But Governor Caden was livid. He was screaming. It can't have disappeared completely. That doesn't quite make sense, though, does it? In what way? Well, we'd understood that only Mr. Vigil was aware of the will's existence. Interesting! In which case, how did the prison governor know to look for it? Oh yes, you're right! I really don't know how he knew. But it certainly seemed as though he knew of the will's existence from the outset. Only he didn't refer to it as a will. What he said was... the Asogi Papers. The Asogi Papers. I really can't tell you anything of the subsequent events. Because, well, of what happened. Your dismissal, and the way you blocked it all from your memory. I'd forgotten all this until today. I don't suppose it's relevant to the case, though. No, it is! Well, anyway, thank you very much for sharing it with us, Mr. Vigil. We're very grateful. I'm afraid there's really little more I can tell you. My wife Evie will be here shortly, so I do hope I don't appear rude, but... No, not at all. Thank you again. What will become of you now? Well, impersonating a police officer is a criminal offense, of course. I imagine that once I'm fully recovered, I shall be arrested. I'm so sorry. Don't be, please. This is all my doing. I always knew that this day would come. Well, I wish you well. Goodbye, Mr. Vigil. Ah! Before you go, there's just one thing. Oh, yes? What is it? The Atsugi papers. I'd be very grateful if you'd make no mention of the things I told you about them. Presumably for some good reason? It's my understanding that their very existence is a closely guarded secret. If it became known that I'd remembered, well, it could be rather troublesome, I think. I understand. But we're gonna ask the prison governor about him anyway, very likely. Some sort of will that Genjin Asugi penned just before his death, which the man himself claimed was his last weapon. I wonder, perhaps it had something to do with his plan to escape. If there's anyone who might know more about a document that Kazuma's father left behind, it would be Mr. Vigil's governor. Then we know precisely where. We must go. Back to Barclay Prison. All right. To Barclay. Where is that? Oh, here we go.
Ugh, back again, are you?
Yes. Hello.
I've heard all about your investigations. I read the report just now. You found him, eh, Vigil?
Yes, luckily.
Well, anywho, the laddie does not work here doesn't work here no more. So your case is not to do with Barclay. I would not like you to get the wrong idea about that.
Of course, yes. Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so... Yes, we've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given the chop.
Hey, come here. You king know very well. So, how about a wee handcuff biscuit?
Oh, they really are like little handcuffs, and as hard as irons too.
So, what brought you to here today?
Well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually.
Is that so?
We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Asogi's cell. I think it's been called the Asogi Papers or something.
Did I not say Gregson's death is not to do with things that might have happened to Barclay? Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not footer about with irrelevant details.
His expression changed completely. We're clearly onto something here. "10-year-old legacy.
That murderous botched execution and the whole miserable escape. They were Barclay's darkest hour. Aye, a shocking embarrassment.
Because the convict had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean?
Aye, for shame. the coroner who confirmed the death of the man after his execution, Courtney Scythe, and my chief warder at the time, Vigil, who was in charge of the whole affair.
But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it.
The rascal wouldn't say otherwise, eh? More handcuffs?
Oh, how can I say no? You can never have too much iron in your diet. Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what had happened. He was so despairing he jumped out of your office window, didn't he?
I didn't like to say it, but that's just Vigil trying to get rid of it. Do you think he wouldn't have jumped from the shock of his crimes being exposed? Eh? I do.
You wouldn't say otherwise, though, would you?
Of course, I cannot shoulder all responsibility myself. I shouldn't have let him deceive me. Actually, there's barely anybody that knows about what went on at the time now. My voice is very difficult to do. With Gregson having been murdered and Dr. Scythe forbidden from having any visitors.
No visitors? Someone obviously doesn't want her giving anything away. Well, we're not going home empty-handed.
And I wouldn't dream of sending you back in with Knock Himmer. Yeah, take a handcuff or two.
Oh, well, it would be rude to say no. Wouldn't want to become anemic.
I suppose if there's anybody who might still who might still can aboot. If there's anybody who might still can aboot what happened back then, it'd be that last from the forensics division. Maria Gore. Yes, Maria Gore. Okay, I thought that was Corey at first.
Maria Gory?
Aye, Scythe's daughter. She didn't have no more. Just the one. But the way Barnes followed in her mam's footsteps, you didn't ever see her without a scalpel in her hand.
Ah! Oh, her! Okay. Yes! The plague mask is finally hitting. Okay. Oh, she's gonna kill us when she sees us. Mama, what is this? Where did she spring from? And did you just call the doctor Mama? Dr. Scythe's daughter, Maria Gory. We could do with talking to her. Gory. Oh, it finally hit me! Gory! Because she's a coroner and worked with dead people. So, she's Dr. Scythe's daughter, but her surname is Gory?
Aye, there's some family history, I'm sure. But I didn't keen the ins of news about it. She grew up watching her mom working with the bodies of folk who died in strange circumstances, and decided to do the same with her own life. I cannot understand it myself.
Perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother?
Perhaps. Anywho, she was in charge of Gregson's autopsy, I believe.
Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report. So either she's leaving shit out, or she's just not that good of a coroner yet, because she's new.
Someone told me that the wee lass always loved her mam's stories about cutting up bodies. There's even a rumor that she used to listen to the funeral march as a lullaby.
Well, then perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy from the case 10 years ago? Excuse me.
I'd say there's a fighting chance at least. After all, that was a life-changing case for all of us.
We really need to speak to Miss Gory herself about this, I think. Well, thank you very much.
I'm not happy about any part of this. It took years from Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Can you no give up on this, laddie? Stop asking pointless questions.
I'm sorry. I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone.
I can't. Can you no just stay away, no? Leave me alone and dinna come back here, eh?
Well, see, we have one more discussion point. The Yasuki Papers. That's a new way to pronounce it.
How do you come to keen about that, laddie? Ken? Is it Keen or Ken? There's no many folks even here in the prison who've heard of those papers.
Well, I can't tell Mr. Vigil told me. I'm afraid our sources must remain confidential, sir. We've been led to believe the papers are actually a last will and testament. Is that right? The professor's, or rather, Genshin Asogi's.
I heard something drop. Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy.
Oh, is that the end of the silent treatment? But then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from his cell, didn't it?
Havers, no. You're off at half cock there. I think you didn't quite get your facts straight. It was there in the cell, exactly where it should have been.
Oh, not what we heard elsewhere.
Let me just have a wee hulk around in here. I'm sure I can find it. He's showing it to us. Aye, here you are. See?
The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi, written with a calligraphy brush.
Of course, I cannot read a word of those Japanese squiggles.
Well, there's something right away. Wasn't Asogi not allowed pen and paper? Well, we'll string that. I thought he did write it with pen and paper and not a calligraphy brush. Something tells me these are fake.
But I mind it says he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back in his homeland.
Yes, that's correct. That's the gist of it. So these are the Yasuki papers?
Aye, of course they are. Papers written by Asogi. No doubt about it. There's no mystery here, laddie. That's your lot. After all the starmash of that slaster of an execution, we sent the man's possessions back to his clan in Japan, and that was the end of it.
I think we ought to make a record of this, Mr. Naruhodo, just in case. I mean, I can't read Japanese either, but I'm assuming the game's going to translate for me.
One thing before you go on your way, Mr. Naruhodo.
Sorry, I have to check the court record. I, Genshin Asogi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son, Kazuma Asogi, in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land, and the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. Excuse me. Oh, yes?
Those papers are not to do with Gregson's death. I'd prefer it if you didn't make no mention of them outside of this office. Or rather, I wouldn't just prefer it, consider it an order from the highest levels of our government.
I understand. So basically, if we show this in court, we're basically condemning ourselves to go back to Japan, be a defense attorney there. Excuse me. Well, I think we got everything, I want to say. It's not clear where to go next. This is the only place we haven't gone today. Is there anything new here? Can we talk to Gina? 2nd of November. Room on Fresno Street. Doesn't look like... Yeah, it doesn't look like anything's changed here. So, back to the prison to kind of regroup with Van Zieks? Fuck it! What's that? Ah, it's just something I was hoping to ask your opinion about, that's all. It's a serious crime for the defense to attempt to extract information from the prosecution by illegal means. I think we have more of a defense and client relationship now, don't we? Okay, not interested, I see. Ah, for funsies! Nothing. I think you know that this is worn by people in my country to show that they're defense lawyers, don't you? And I think you know that I believed you to be merely playing at lawyer craft, initially. But it would seem your armband may actually imply some dormant talent after all. Lord Van Zieks, do you mean? Let's hope you wake up soon. Yes, I was clearly daydreaming. I almost thought I got a compliment there. 1 second, I have to make disgusting sinus noises. Oh, it's never pleasant. Why is it that whenever I talk for long periods of time, I start getting congested? Okay, so I have no idea what to do next. Is he... Oh yeah, he's still here! We can talk to him! Yo, we found the papers! You know, his disguise as Mr. Gossip was really quite masterful, wasn't it? I can't remember anything about it except for the floppy lip. I imagine not even his wife would have recognized him. Perhaps, but did he really have to take it quite so far? Ah, I wanted to show him the papers. Can't show him the papers. Damn it! Okay. We can't even examine. All we can do is move. Game may as well have just taken away our ability to come back here. Weren't we here yesterday, Susanoo? Okay, cutscene time. Here we go. Oh yeah, talk to Cosmo, duh. Although, is this his office now? No arguments, Prosecutor Asagi. You will continue with the trial exactly as I instructed. Is that clear? Perfectly. It's Kazuma-sama! Defying Lord Strongheart by the sound of it, he never did know when to back down. On your way now, Asagi. My lord. Kazuma. Bye! He left without saying a word. Yes, what are you doing here? Oh, I was just hoping to ask you a few questions if you wouldn't mind. One of Van Zieks' trial concluded today. Prosecutor Asagi's unwelcome inquiries are going to make it take longer than necessary. Unwelcome inquiries? As a result, and losing even more precious time. Currently 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 41 seconds. 42, 43, 44, 45. Then we must resolve everything before 3 hours have passed. Mr. Naruhodo, excuse me. In a miraculous not even 5 minutes? Anyway, I can't let the man's obvious bad mood put me off. I need information. The Reaper. Does Prosecutor Asagi believe that Lord Van Zieks is the Reaper? I wouldn't know. It was 10 years ago, in that fateful closed trial, that Lord Van Zieks made a name for himself among the judiciary. But the next trial he fought, he lost. It meant the ringleader of a criminal organization was acquitted, thanks to all the jurors being under duress. But that's awful! The man's freedom was short-lived. He lasted just 3 days. Yes, let me see. He died in a rock slide at his place of work, I believe. Where was his place of work? Correct. That was the inauguration of the Reaper of the Bailey. And people believed Lord Van Zieks was responsible? He was brought to trial himself, but it was shown to have been an accident. So he must have had a solid alibi then. Nevertheless, the mysterious deaths continued. In total, 16 persons perished in unusual circumstances, ostensibly at the hands of the Reaper. That's a long run of coincidences. Well, the Reaper's true identity may well be revealed by this trial. And the impact that revelation would have on the British public cannot be understated. 1 second. Is that why it's a closed trial? Precisely. Closed trial. This country hasn't seen a closed trial for 10 years. So the last one was the professors, the trial of Genshin Isogi? Correct. Actually, we heard that originally you were going to prosecute that trial yourself, Lord Strongheart. Van Zieks entreated me to relinquish the prosecution to him, that he might avenge his brother's death. And here we are, 10 years later. With the son of the man Van Zieks had condemned now looking to avenge his father's death in the same way. You do say that what goes around comes around. However, it would seem that the new young prosecutor is harboring some ulterior motive as well. Kazuma is? I like my organization to run smoothly, in the exact manner that I prescribe. As with the giant clock in here, I won't tolerate a single cog being out of step with the others. Ah, so that's what all these gears are about here. Is that one cog? Like, up at the very top on the right side, that is, horizontal? Like, is that actually connected to anything? What's the point of that particular cog? Or gear? If the young man refuses to mesh with the other parts of my great machine, I will be forced to take steps. What do you mean? Not something with which you need concerns. In any case, all your questions will be answered tomorrow. Now, I shall have to ask you to excuse me. At this moment, I've been delayed from attending my next meeting by precisely 3 hours. Oh my! That is a long time! And I hold you entirely responsible. Even though we miraculously managed to fit everything into not even 5 minutes. Has it been 5 minutes since we started talking to this guy? I don't understand. I wonder if you might agree to us talking with Prosecutor Asagi. Discussions between the defense and the prosecution outside the courtroom are generally frowned upon. However, I will make an exception in this case. Now go. You can find him in his office. Oh, thank you. So now we get to see what his office is. It's probably just Van Zeke's office. Oh yeah, it literally is his office. He just has this tiny little desk in the corner of Van Zeke's office. I forgot about that. I'm really not all sure. I know how to talk to him at the moment. Or rather, the same location. Yeah, it's the same office. Ugh. If I was him, I would take the main desk. Fuck it. Is that a dollhouse? Okay, I see what's going on here. He made a makeshift miniature of the crime scene. Okay, so this is the office of Prosecutor Asagi now, is it? Kazuma-sama is doing so well for himself. Even though he's always forced to kneel on the floor, Japanese style, in the dark corner. It's his habit. It's his habit to sit Seiya style whenever he's working. Wait, seriously? Is he doing that? Okay, he's over by the real desk. Kazuma. I thought it wouldn't be long before you paid me a visit, Ryunosuke. I was right about what I said, wasn't I? Sorry? Now you have all the markings of a great defense lawyer. Well, I always believed that you'd fulfill your dream of advocating for the British courts. I just never imagined for 1 second it would be as a prosecutor. Seeing you stand in a foreign courtroom, so gallantly realizing your dream, Kazuma-sama, I'm truly happy for you. And I'm truly thankful to you, Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. Ryunosuke, I always thought it would be fun for you and I to shake up the British legal system a little together. This isn't quite how I envisaged it, but I suppose it's just another twist of fate. I've learned a lot of things during my time in London. About how Susanoo-san's father was himself a visiting student here once, along with Judge Jigoku, and about what happened with your father. Then you'll have no difficulty understanding why I had no choice, why I had to find a way to get to Britain as a visiting student myself. I want to hear it from you, Kazuma. As you wish, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Your disappearance. It's getting on for a year now, since what happened on the SS Buria. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain. When a bizarre series of coincidences led to those tragic events, I thought I'd lost my best friend forever. I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I awoke, I was lying on a bed. It was a narrow little room. There was a posy of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize I was in a cabin of the ship. I slipped out of the room and headed up onto the deck. Were you already suffering from amnesia at that point? Yes. I didn't know what had happened or where I was. It was just this voice in my head. You have something to do. Something no one else can know about. Go to Great Britain. Your task awaits you there. It was a call that I couldn't ignore. It compelled me relentlessly. Out on deck, I saw that I was on a huge steamship, and we were docked in a large port. It must have been Hong Kong! Yes, it must have been. Presumably just before they were due to carry your body off the ship. I just realized it was Ryunosuke talking. I had no idea of the situation, but I did have the feeling that this was in some way my last chance. So I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. So he was on the same ship the entire time. Just hiding. God, that's weird. It's just weird to think that someone who died on the ship is still alive, but they're just hiding somewhere. Then I disappeared into the crowded streets of that foreign port city. Or did he really get off at Hong Kong? So I could plan my onward journey to Great Britain. Your journey to Britain. Just under a year ago, with all my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Okay, so he was left behind in Hong Kong. He wasn't on the same ship as our other. Everything was foreign to me. The sights, the sounds, the smells. My head reeled. I was truly at a loss. I realized now that I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back. No money, of course. Oh, how terrifying for you. Luckily, though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose? That's right, and on the back of that, I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling at countless ports, I finally arrived at Dover. That must have been some 3 months ago. The formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and had literally nothing to his name. But he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. Of course, I had no idea why I'd moved heaven and earth to get here at that point. So, how did you end up becoming Lord Van Zee's apprentice then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard. And by sheer coincidence, Lord Strongheart was there to attend a meeting. That's when the second feather in my cap came into play. Would that have been your knowledge of the law? Yes, exactly. Lord Strongheart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. And then, 9 days ago, you finally got your memory back after the trial involving Drebber. Yes, I did. Your father, Genshin. Ever since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream. Mark my words, Ryunosuke, I'll be chosen as a visiting student, and make my way to Great Britain someday. Did you know the entire time about what happened to your father here? 16 years ago. When my father left on that exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. Okay, hold on. I know they're saying if it's university, then I guess it's possible, but he looks like 8 here. I have to check. I have to fucking check. Where is he? There he is. 24. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I thought he was like 20 or something. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It was my last memory. But what I remember most about my father is his unswerving sense of justice. 6 years after he left, a gentleman called at our family home. He told me that Genshin, my father, had been taken ill. In England, and passed away. It was Professor Migatoba, your father, Susanoo-san. Oh my! Ever since then, the professor was very good to me. He even helped to fund my university education at Yume. I'll be forever in his debt. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he told me. Oh! Then one day, a letter arrived at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer, and the writer cursed the Asogi name. Oh no! As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years. Letter from Britain. Presumably, the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. If whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary, he could have been present at the closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. Yeah, I mean, who fucking The man was already sentenced to death. Justice had been served. Why go after his family now? I imagine the British government did its very best to silence whoever sent that letter. But someone who knew the truth couldn't bear the resentment was always going to be a problem. But still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing? There was a newspaper cutting included with the letter. It was the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree. Well, what did my father have to say about the letter? I couldn't bring myself to show it to him. What? Why not? Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me my father was taken by a fatal illness. That couldn't have been easy for him, and he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jigoku. Ah! To the other visiting student? He faltered for the briefest of moments, but then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment, I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily, before recovering his poise. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to this strain of grief. She too passed away. Fuck. That's when I made up my mind that one day, without fail, I would cross the seas to Britain and see the truth for myself. The truth about my father, Genshin Asogi. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. Oh, Kazuma-sama. Excuse me. Okay, I'm back. The Reaper's trial. What we learned today in court turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Lord Van Zieks isn't the Reaper, you know. I almost don't want to believe it myself, but it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was... It's clear that the Inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along. What? You mean you knew? The real question is, who's been giving orders to the Inspector? What? Yes, Barrick Von Zieks is the real Reaper. Ah, but I know that 10 years ago it was him who decided my father must be a mass murderer and sent him to his grave. No! He was merely saying that justice was done as the law dictates. He's not to blame. Ultimately, it's people who condemn him. The law is just a tool that they use to do it. Kind of like what you're doing now? And when a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. But I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life. Kazuma. On the contrary, my father's life was taken by the Reaper. Well, this is the only thing I can think left to do. Kazuma, what do you make of this? Nothing?! He has nothing to say about his father's last will and testament! He has nothing to say! Okay then. Present everything until it becomes obvious what we have to do. The Reaper, at last, I get to take my revenge. Kazuma, Lord Van Zieks isn't responsible for your father's death, and he's not the Reaper. He's the defendant and deserving of a fair trial. I mean, like the one my father had? It's a closed trial now, too. The conditions are exactly as they were 10 years ago. And even if it ruffles some feathers, I have a plan to show that man for what he really is. Kazuma. This came up in the trial, didn't it? As something a little dubious. I mean, oh duh, there's still, Maria Gori to talk to. How did I forget about that? This came up in the trial, didn't it? As something a little dubious, I mean? The fact that no time of death was recorded on Inspector Gregson's autopsy report? Yes, there were some unexpected turns in the courtroom earlier. The suggestion you came up with certainly took everyone by surprise. The idea that the victim died the previous day at some other location is quite something. Well, considering when the pocket watch had stopped and the scorch marks on the candle, it's certainly a distinct possibility. The evidence and the scene both point to it. To be honest, it bothered me too, so I paid a visit to the autopsy room earlier. The coroner responsible wasn't there, but I got a name. Dr. Gory. If it wouldn't trouble you, Kazuma-sama, we'd very much like to speak with the coroner too. Of course, the last thing I want is for anything to be brushed under the carpet. Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory is behind Lowgate Cemetery. Lowgate Cemetery? By Barclay Prison, you mean? Ah, you know it, do you? The prison where my father was incarcerated and robbed of his life. Kazuma-sama. Well, thank you. We'll pay a visit to the laboratory later today. And that does it. Okay. So it looks like we're going to the lab, and then that's likely going to be the end of the investigation phase, and then we're going to end the stream. I want to thank you. What for? For this. You safeguarded the soul of the Asagi clan. Well, it is a famous sword that's been in your family for generations. My only slight regret is that I never got the chance to draw it before I returned it to you. Karuma is said to have been forged by a master swordsmith during the Sengoku Warring Stage period. I come from a long lineage of warriors, many of whom were expert swordsmen. Well then, you're a chip off the old block, I'd say. This blade, Karuma, is a symbol of the Asagi clan's honor and might. Apparently, one of my father's apprentices even took the blade's name for a surname. Okay. Yeah, I heard that, Karuma is the name of the name of the Von Karma family in the Japanese versions of the game. So, the Von Karmas are not descendants of the Asagi name, but rather a student of one of the Asagis. Karuma. It does sound formidable, that's for sure. 16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever at his side, which is why it means so much to me that I have it by my side again now, too. And that is all thanks to you. It was an honor. Can I have the other sword, though? Like, the one you got here in England? You know, that way we both have swords? Now, I have preparations to make for tomorrow. Perhaps I said a little too much. Kazuma, you've changed. No, Ryunosuke, I haven't changed at all. It's you who's changed. I can completely understand your resentment for Lord Van Zieks given what happened. But the fact is, those events in this case are, well, unrelated? Is that what you want to say? How can you be so sure? What do you mean? Never mind. That man is the Reaper, and it's for that reason that the Inspector was killed. I'm going to prove as much in court tomorrow. Why would he kill one of his own? Why would he kill one of his own subordinates? I'm going to prove as much in court tomorrow, by whatever means necessary. I can't let you do that, Kazuma. I know you'll do what you have to as a lawyer, but I'm sure I don't need to tell you that I won't be taking any prisoners in the courtroom. I would expect nothing less. Until tomorrow, then, at the Old Bailey. Okay, so I think that's a signal to leave. No, wait, not converse, move. Okay, so we've reached the well, technically, because I started late, we've almost reached the 2-hour mark. Hopefully this is the end of it. This place really is creepy, isn't it? Well, being a dead room, it's probably full of spirits of the dissected. But actually, there's a rather pleasing scent of roses in the air. Well, being a dead room, the coroner probably needs a bull scent like that to mask the odor of death. Iris, do you think we could change the subject? Yeah, she's sharpening the scalpel to stab us in the neck with. What was that? Yeah, there she is. Dr. Gory? Okay, so she's wearing the mask, but also there's another mask there on the table by the skeleton. I don't understand. Does she have two masks? Or does she have two masks that are, well, not exactly the same? The one she's wearing now has like the two hose things on it, and the other one doesn't. But I think my point still stands. I don't know what voice to give this girl. What? That noise before. I was sharpening my tools. I'd be dead meat if I didn't keep a perfectly keen edge on them. Right. In following the collagen fibers on the dermis, an expertly sharpened scalpel cuts like cheese. Would you like the demonstration? Oh, yes, please! I'd love to see! Then, I think you'll do nicely. Huh? No! No, I wouldn't do nicely at all! I mean, maybe some other time. Was that Tut? Oh, we came here to ask questions, so... we have actually met before. I'm a lawyer, if you remember. You're not dead yet. What? So Mama said I wasn't to cut you open. She's so strict about things like that. Well, good. I just had some scruples, at least. Oh dear. It looks like she's not interested in talking to us, for the time being anyway. For the time being? You mean until we die? I hope that's a way off. Sorry, but I wasn't planning on dying anytime soon. Surely there's some less dramatic way of making her listen. We gotta present something. Tell me what I wanna know! Tell me right now, damn it! Don't forget, You're responsible for putting my mom in jail, so she does know us! Why should I help you? Oh, I'm getting too much fun out of this. These, I guess? Okay. I like how when I mean, because of how, like, the animation speed up, you can see the exact moment I hit the button to skip. Little lady, I'm with Scotland Yard! Okay, never mind, that didn't work. Just present everything until we get something that works. Oh, here we go. About this photograph, Dr. Gory. Who's that? Sorry? It's Inspector Gregson, of course! The victim of the case! Ah, I see. I don't remember the faces. Internal organs, muscle tissue, bullet trauma, those things I remember. Well, please try to also remember that I don't want to know anything about all of that. Well, that didn't help us. Oh, here we go. Oh, of course it's the autopsy report we present. Why didn't I think to present the autopsy report? I'm an idiot. Dr. Gory, we actually came here to ask you about this. He was very good. Good? Sorry? His skin didn't snag my blade once, and a very little mess. His joints dislocated easily, and his muscle tissue was a pleasure to work with. We can skip those details! But there is one thing about the report that's caught my attention. You don't seem to have a recorded time of death. That's not my fault. Oh! That made me jump. Then please, tell us what happened. She's doing... The fact that she's doing it with a complete straight face. I will stare a burning a hole into my soul. Oh, why do I find this so funny? I don't understand why I find this funny, but I do. So, why doesn't this autopsy report include the victim's time of death then? It's really the most crucial detail. And it's back on! I was told not to write it. What? By whom? Male Strongheart, the Lord Chief Justice, he came here. Lord Strongheart came? He said that from the witness statements about the gunshot and the other evidence, it was obvious. The man clearly died at 5 p.m. on the 1st of November when the gunshot was heard. But that's not the time of death you were on the report. You didn't write anything. Was there some reason you didn't include it? Well, she didn't want to lie, but she was also told... I mean, she didn't want to just straight up lie and say, like, okay, it was on this day, because that's what he said. But she also was under orders, so she's like, okay, I just won't write it in. That's a medium between the two of them. And it's clear, I mean, it's clear to me that he wasn't killed at that time. Dr. Gory, if you're hiding something under Lord Strongheart's instructions, then sooner or later, you're going to go the same way as your mother. Oh, now she's gonna kill us! Give it here, then. Hmm? What's she scribbling so furiously? Fuck off? There. You've written... What? What she's written? Tell us! The, indeterminate? But... I gotta see that for myself. Oh, excuse me. I'm very sorry. Evidence suggests measures may have been taken to disguise the time of death. Interesting. So, how exactly does that go about happening? What do you mean by that? Why was the time of death indeterminate? When the specimen was brought in, it was still fresh. So the time of death could easily... Okay, there was lag, which is weird. You'd think they would have designed the game specifically for the Switch. I'm sorry, but if Ace Attorney is associated with any console family, it's the Nintendo console family. So I don't understand why it wasn't optimized for Switch. So the time of death could easily have coincided with when the gunshot was heard. But there was one... But there was one small discrepancy. Can you even hear me with my mouth over... with my hand over my mouth like this? What discrepancy? There was some fried fish in the pocket of the specimen's overcoat. And that fish had started to rot. What? If the victim liked fried fish, he presumably liked to eat it before it went off. Well, yes. What are you really trying to say? It's possible that someone tried to manipulate the apparent time of death. Manipulate the... Is that even possible to do? Theoretically, if you were to kill the body in ice, you could do radio as a future precaution. And if the overcoat wasn't on the body at the time, then only the fish would have started to rot. With today's science, it's not yet possible to determine if the body was killed or not. But today's science is advanced enough to let you freeze a corpse, it seems? But surely, to chill a corpse like that would require an enormous electrical refrigerator. And I don't imagine many households in London are equipped with such a device. No, definitely not. But maybe in a factory? Or some other special places? I don't recall seeing any factories of such like on Fresno Street, though. I wonder if the inspector's body had been chilled somehow. What might the actual time of death have been? I couldn't say for sure. But at the time, it might have been a day earlier. No! In other words, it would corroborate your previous deduction, Mr. Garcardo. That Inspector Gregson was killed a day before his body was discovered, at a different location. Did you inform Lord Strongheart of this possibility? He simply said that there are no electrical refrigerators of that size in the vicinity. Oh yes, one other thing. It's something the governor of Barclay Prison told us. He said that your mother, Dr. Scythe, was responsible for confirming the death of the professor after his execution? Oh, she doesn't. We're just giving her excuse after excuse after excuse to stab us in the throat. The professor. Apparently, you always enjoy listening to your mother's stories about her work, so we were wondering if you might know something about what happened 10 years ago. That's not all Mama did. Sorry? My Mama carried out the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks as well. What? Really? Her eyes. I mean, you can see the little details in her eyes moving. That mean, I mean, I'm taking that to mean that, like, she's very proud of this, very happy about this. It's making her very emotional at the very least. The brother of Lord Van Zieks, the professor's final victim. The idea of carrying out an autopsy on a member of the aristocracy was completely unthinkable back then. But the detective in charge of the investigation insisted that it was miraculously authorized. That detective being Inspector Gregson, of course. Quite an accomplishment for one man. That autopsy provided the vital clue needed to arrest the killer. And Mama was there for that historic event. What does all this mean? You know, that amazing autopsy happened right here in this very room. The professor and Clint Van Zieks. They both spent their final moments before their burial on that dissection table there. So this lab, Mama's lab, was instrumental in some of the country's most important events. She really is proud of her mother. I wonder if you'd tell us more about exactly what happened back then, Dr. Gory. Okay, back to conversing. Okay. Alright. Confirmation of death. Here we go. The professor's execution was Mama's first big case. She had to be an attendant at Barclay Prison's execution chamber and sign the certificate to confirm the convict's death. Mama's the best coroner in the world, you know. I was so proud of her. But the execution didn't actually take place. No. And worse still, Mama actually helped with the jailbreak. Interesting. So she was... Okay.
I didn't want to know.
Oh dear. You found out recently, you mean?
I believe in her, with Mama, but... now I wonder if I'm starting down the same path as her.
You mean because you omitted the time of death on this autopsy report? But that's because Lord Strongheart forbade you from including it.
Just like Mama, I'm sure she was coerced by somebody too.
Yes, that's my feeling as well. There's no doubt that there were powerful forces at play 10 years ago. The execution couldn't have been staged without a lot of people at the prison knowing about it. Obviously, the prison governor must have been in on it as well. The big man with the little handcuffs? According to what he told us, he was tricked by the chief warder. He says he knew nothing about it. But the chief warder also says that he knew nothing about it. Of course he said that. I'd say the same thing. Just who was behind that jailbreak all those years ago? Clint's autopsy. You mentioned the autopsy of Clint Van Zeeks. It was at a time when carrying out autopsies of murder victims was very unusual. It's still not a practice that's observed in our country, even now. It turned out that he was the professor's final victim, and when the autopsy was performed, Mama was present, although only as a secondary assistant. The person leading the procedure was called Dr. John H. Wilson. Oh, that's right, my daddy! Oh, okay, here we go. That's confirmed. That's confirming it. Oh, dear. And there was one other person present, the primary assistant. He was a visiting student from the Far East. Wait, a visiting student? It must have been my father, Eugene Mikitoba. I had no idea Professor Mikitoba had been involved in something so important. But the outcome of that historic autopsy was the discovery of a vital piece of evidence that led to the capture of the professor. So that's how they came to identify Genshin Isogi as the infamous mass murderer. Do you happen to know anything about that piece of evidence? Can you tell us any more?
Would you like to see the records for yourself?
What? Would that be alright?
What's the point of keeping records if people don't look at them? They're found under V at the back of the package, with the other records from the last decade.
Thank you! Let's see, Van Zeeks. That's strange. What, Mr. Naruhodo? They aren't here. There's nothing under Van Zeeks.
There must be!
Perhaps somebody took them away? No one's allowed to take documents related to the professor case out of this room. But you're right, they're gone! Well, when was the last time somebody looked at them? Do you remember? It was... Oh yes, I remember now. It was 2 years ago. A consulting detective came one day, saying that he'd like to see the records. No, you don't mean... Herlock Sholmes was his name. Oh, Sholmes! Sholmes! No, deep down I knew that was coming. We gotta talk to him now. Do you think he stole the records? Oh no, surely not! Iris, this can't be right, can it? If it is true, she didn't know about it. Iris? That was my Sonic figure falling over. I'll get it later. Hopefully it didn't break. I hope you don't mind, but... What is it, Iris? I just remembered something very important I have to do. I'm going to have to leave you now. She's going to find Sholmes. Oh, this is very sudden, Iris. Well, we'll come with you then. Oh, no, there's no need. You and Bruno can take your time here. Bye for now, then. Good luck. Well, see, we're done here, but, okay. Wait a minute, little girl. Me? I remember now. You've been here before, haven't you? Have you, Iris? Yes, 2 years ago, when that detective came. You were with him, weren't you? You were a living specimen then, too. That's the way it usually works, yes. Was I? I really don't remember. Anyway, sorry, but a mustache. Wait, Iris! I'll brew up a pot for you when you get back home. What's the matter with her? She's behaving really strangely all of a sudden. Well, in that case, we won't keep you any longer either. It's been quite a while since I had any visitors. This was really fun. But next time you come, I'd prefer it if you were ready for dissection. Yeah, I can't make any promises, sorry. It's a bit strange that the records of Clint Van Zeek's autopsy have disappeared. I think we've asked all we came to ask now. Let's see here. Okay, so now we're looking for either Iris or Sholmes, one or the other. Up here? Oh, cutscene! What to do? Oh boy. Is this just... Are you alright, Mr. Naruhodo? It's rather unusual to find ourselves here in the middle of our investigations. It's just occurred to me that I might have forgotten something we left this, when we left this morning. Please don't worry. As long as you continue to investigate thoroughly, you won't go far wrong. Oh, yes, of course. I must get back to work as soon as possible. Well, that didn't accomplish anything. Has this orange always been here? Yeah, this accomplished nothing, so... We're just gonna go everywhere until something happens. He's not even here. Okay, cutscene. We found it. I think. Hopefully. Oh, yeah, okay. So there's that case there now. Is Gina here? The police are still busily investigating in here, then. But Gina's nowhere to be seen. Where is she? Yes, it has been blissfully quiet, hasn't it? Perhaps she's out investigating on her... Oh, no. Don't fucking tell me. No. Well, I expect she'll be back before too long. Shall we wait? Actually... There's something different about this room since the last time we were here, isn't there? We could always use the time to investigate more thoroughly. Well, I mean, I see that this green case here. Is there something else I'm missing? Something else I'm missing that was different? This little trunk wasn't here before, was it? Oh, it appears to be made of metal. It must be very heavy. I wonder to whom it belongs. There are some initials on the outside. Look, TG. Tobias Gregson. Let's ask one of the policemen if they know how it came to be here.
Oi! What do you think you're doing here?
Oh,
That's my trunk, that is! Hands off!
Gina!
Where were you hiding?
I don't know. You leave something unattended. I'm sorry. I don't know. You leave something unattended for a few seconds, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got his gritty eyes on it. Just a wild guess, Gina. But
What? Spit it out, Odo!
is it fair to say that that you've only owned this trunk since this morning's trial?
What? What are you trying to say? Come on, this trunk goes with me everywhere. Always has. Where have you been the last year?
Trying not to incur your wrath, mainly. Your boss. Oh god, I'm sorry. You should hear them talking at the yawn now. They should be ashamed of themselves. They're saying that it was the boss who killed all them bludgers. Ah, you mean the whole Reaper thing? Yeah. Apparently, the boss was investigating stuff that that no one else at the yard knew nothing about. Stuff to do with all them criminals walking off scot-free. Yes, the ones prosecuted by Lord Van Zeeks who used bribery and corruption to evade conviction.
Well then obviously, it was that bloomin' Reaper giving the orders, wasn't it?
But why would people suspecting Inspector Gregson of being involved in why would people be suspecting Inspector Gregson of being involved in the killings? There was a notebook in his office. Oh no, this doesn't sound good. It had details about all the crimes that have been pegged as the Reaper's work.
What?
No! Did you see it, Gina? Did you see that notebook? It wouldn't
Flamin' let me! Cause I'm just an apprentice apparently.
But it was me who found it, and he was my boss. That's right. I was pretty miffed about it, so I sneaked a peek at what it said anyway. Oh, that's our Gina. The secret notebook. So you managed to see what was written in Gregson's secret notebook anyway, did you? The way I see it, it's my right to read what he wrote. And what had he written, Gina? Dates, times, places, names, and an whole long list of them. All details about the bludgeons supposed to have been done in by the Reaper. Excuse me. But there could be an explanation for that. Perhaps it was a record of the Inspector's investigations into the Reaper's activities. Exactly! That's what I said! That's the first thing you think, right? As it happens, it was full of names I recognized anyway. Well, the Reaper's targets were almost exclusively known leaders of London's criminal underworld. Well, yeah, but there was one name right at the end that was a bit odd. At the end of the list, you mean? I'm pretty sure the date against it was 31st of October. What's today's date, actually? I wasn't paying attention. I don't pay too much attention to that, because the date usually doesn't matter too much. Oh, the day before the Inspector was found dead? So, what was the odd name? It weren't like a name I've seen before. It was something like, Nah, it's no good. I can't remember it. I don't think it was an English name, put it that way. Oh dear. What a pity. There was something else too. I don't know if it matters, but the same name kept coming up over and over again. Shin, it was. Oh! Don't suppose it means anything, but... Did you say Shin?
What? Does it mean something?
Lord Van Zeeks knew the name too. He mentioned her as well. The woman who actually did the deeds. And now, we find out her name appeared in Gregson's secret notebook. Your investigations. We haven't seen you for a little while. That's my dice set. We haven't seen you for a little while, have we, Gina?
Well, of course not. I've been busy, ain't I? Investigating all that. The lads at the yard are trying to trace the boss's movements the day before it happened.
The day before, that would be the undercover investigation of the Red-Headed League, then.
Only the boss didn't go, did he? You found some cove what was pretending to be in, didn't you, Odo?
Yes, it was Mr. Vigil who actually went to the park on Lime Street that day, posing as Gregson.
Well, anyway, you ain't the only one turning stuff up. I've got my own ways of getting results.
The dog?
Hey, the doggy's back! When me and me partner here get together, there's nothing we can't track down. I just remembered it's been a while since I let the dog out.
If you'll all excuse me, I am gonna go let the dog out to go to the bathroom because I just realized it's been a few hours since I've done that, and I don't want him doing anything on the floor down here, so, I'll be back. Alright, I'm back. Dog has had his bathroom break, and I also fed him while I was at it. When me and my partner here get together, there's nothing we can't track down. Dogs are the cutest. Oh, little Toby! He's such a faithful friend. So, have you tracked anything down then? What do you think, eh? Of course we have. Can't tell you though. Police business, isn't it? Anyway, the point is, if you lot ever need any help, you know who to turn to, right? Me and the owl out here. The bark, this tail's wagging so fast, it's adorable. He's so happy. Right, because he looks so hellish, honest. Oh, I love dogs. Gina, about your hellhound there. Chief Inspector Toby, you mean? He's the pride of the police, what he is. In Japanese, police dog means something quite different and not altogether nice to those involved in crime. But here in Britain, it's a wonderful compliment, it seems, for a canine at least. It should be, after all. The Great Exhibition case the other day, it was Toby here who managed to locate Drebber's workshop. Maybe it's time for another demonstration on what this super dog can do, eh? Do we have something the Chief Inspector could catch the scent of? I wonder. I mean, there's the wig. Is there something a little more obvious that I'm just forgetting?
Take that!
Well, Chief Inspector Toby, if you wouldn't mind having a sniff of this. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. He might be a little too keen, don't you think? What? Oh, it's probably too late to clip it. But oh, what? Okay, it's the player that crashed. Did the stream go down? Or was it just the player on my end that crashed? Hold on, I'm gonna see about clipping that. Oh, I think I was too late. Ah. Woof. Ah! Look what he's gone to. Oh my! That trunk clearly still has a very strong scent of Inspector Gregson. Yeah, it's his. You can tell it's Tobias Gregson is his initials. In other words, it must have belonged to him. Alright, it's a fair cop, I suppose. And you really got away with it, too. You always talk so proudly of Chief Inspector Toby's nose and what it can achieve. Did it not cross your mind that he might identify something that was right next to us? Yeah, that was a bit of a bloomer, weren't it? I didn't know now then, Gina. Eh? I think it's time you told us the truth. About that trunk. The metal trunk. It weren't like that. It just weren't. What are you talking about? I know what's going through your head, through that head of yours, but that won't happen. All right then. What did happen? Well, like I said before, we were trying to trace the boss's movements. So I let Toby have a whip of the boss's overcoat. And as soon as I done that, he went off like a shot. Straight
straight to that sandwich. To a sandwich? Not to a bag of chips? Mr. Hirohodo, I believe Gina means the witness. Oh, him, okay. Oh, I forgot about the same here. Yeah, he had it in between the wooden boards of his. The boss's trunk. You mean when they heard the sound like a gunshot and all piled in here? Exactly! He nabbed it from the scene. Goodness! Me and the chief inspector gave that sandwich a good grill, and you know what he said? I thought it might fetch a good price. I'm not doing stuttering. I have a real life stuttering problem, and I don't want to go back into making it worse. Good price, the chop wouldn't be needing it anymore, so... But that's all I did, nothing more. Wouldn't you Adam and Eve, the cheek of it, eh? Stealing the dead boss's stuff to frog. So, Miss Venus wasn't the only one to meddle with the scene of the crime, then. How could they? So anyway, that's all what happened. And it's pretty decent trunk, so I figured I might as well make use of it. The dog is cute. Dog. Is there something wrong with that, eh? Well, maybe you and Mr. Sandwich should try to find the answer to that question together. I think perhaps that trunk should be turned over to the police, don't you? What are you talking about? What are you on about? I am the police! Gina, if you wouldn't mind. Could we maybe examine it? Yeah, alright then. Do what you want with it. Thank you. We shall make a detailed record of our examination of the evidence. It's not in the court record yet, Naruhodo. Now it's in the court record. Now you can examine it as much as you like. Okay, I was going to examine it right away, but what is this dog on? What is he on about? What's the matter with Toby? Why is he acting so aggressively toward me all of a sudden? Mr. Naruhodo, be careful! It must be the trunk! Oh shit! Oh, there's the hellhound! Wait, hold on. While I have it. Was it damaged by the dog, or was that something else? Let's have a look inside. Because something tells me I'm going to lose it in a bit. What is this? Look! There's something inside. Oh! Let's see! It appears to be a passport, authorizing him to travel overseas. Overseas? I mean, Britain is an island, technically, and he was set to go to France. But does, from England to France count as overseas? I don't know. I guess it's because I always saw England as being so close to the main continent of Europe that I just never considered it. Perhaps the day of departure might tell us something. That was... Oh! Well, what is it? It was for travel on the 31st of October, just one day before the incident. Oh. Okay, so he was... That would explain it. Okay, so if he was killed on some kind of a ship, they could have thrown his body into, like, the ship's freezer and then brought him back to Fresno. Though how they did that without being detected is something of a mystery that we'll have to figure out. Also, there's what looks to be a broken piece of knife in there. I'm sorry, I'm scratching my hand. What? Really? Passport has been entered in the court record. We'll take a look at that later. Gregson went to France the day before his body was discovered? Or he was supposed to, at least.
Do you see that? There's something stuck in the side of the trunk here. It's glinting. Looks like a fragment of metal of some sort. But it's wedged in so tightly I can't remove it. But don't cut yourself. You better leave it, I think. Anything else in here we can examine? Oh, here we go. Look at this dark stain here. Do you think? Yes, I'm afraid so. I think it's blood. I knew you were going to say that. So that presumably means that this was present at the scene when Inspector Gregson was killed. It's the most logical conclusion, yes. I think Gina's been carrying this around with her. If you didn't know any better, I suppose it does look like a grease stain from all the fish and chips. I figured it would straighten itself out. Now I gotta do that myself. Let's take a look here. That's not important. Alright, looks like it's been fully examined. Let's take a look at the passport. Passport number ACD0522. Within 1 week from 31st of October. Port of Dunkirk, France. Purpose of travel, police, business. Notes, permission for the applicant and one additional person to travel. Alright, now let's see what this dog is doing to me. Toby, oi! What are you doing? Get your lick off his face! You're gonna lick off his face. Mr. Naruhodo! Mr. Naruhodo! Cheetah, quick! Hail a carriage! Oh, we have a time. I'm assuming this is the last bit then. The dog licked me so hard I fell unconscious. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, are you alright? Miss Susato?
Ah, conscious again at last! A blessed relief, my dear fellow. After all, to drop dead after a moderate licking by a small terrier, most unseemly. What is or isn't seemingly is irrelevant here, Mr. Sholmes. I'm so glad there's no lasting damage. How are you feeling?
I'm fine, thank you. Did you bring me back here? Ah, what's this on my head? A bandage?
Sadly, we had no ice. So that's a compress of sugar. So that's a compress of sugar water.
Sugar water?
Don't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. It's a first aid treatment that my father taught me.
Oh, thank you.
So let us take tea when you're feeling up to it. But of course, no sugar in the patient's cup.
The bum on my head is throbbing sweetly enough. Don't worry. Whenever you feel ready, then. What's it? Oh, we've already done that. Yo, what was with those files you stole? Thank you for your concern, Mr. Sholmes.
My dear fellow, think nothing of it. I must say I was quite startled when I heard that you'd been attacked by a dog. For a moment, I feared that the infamous murderer of somebody had come back from the dead.
You mean the professor?
Fortunately, I see your prize sword is unscathed. That stiff, turned-up collar of yours obviously afforded some welcome protection.
Was I that close to death? All I remember is the dog licking my face over and over and over again.
Well, if you wish to avoid such troubles in the future, a little mustard spread on the cheek should do the trick. I should think that would balance the sweetness of your bandage rather splendidly.
So, downstairs, I assume?
Schwarzbiergebot. Bodend Wien, Feuerberg, den Schlund es mir verbrannt, ach Hopfen deine Wut.
I have so many questions!
Dem Knacker ich befahl, hat wie ein Diamant den Zahn entzweiet.
What?
Brach, o über deine Wut. Herr dem seid holdlich gelobt und auf den ersten Streich alle Seiten es zerrissen.
Ah, no, it's an old German folk song. Not that fine rendition, I think. That's the least of my concerns.
Im Schwarzbierch gebot.
Iris?
Bodend wie Feuerberg.
Iris, what's the matter?
Und es mir verbrannt. Ach, Hopfen deine Wut.
Who is that sprawling, that relaxed gentleman over there? It's your dad.
Ich befahl, hat wie ein
Iris? Is she even listening?
den
Excuse me, sir. I do apologize for troubling you whilst you're singing so merrily, but would you be, kind enough to explain the situation?
seid holdlich gelobt und auf
Well, that worked.
den Streich
Slap him!
alle
A crooning gentleman and a mute young girl. A rather tantalizing juxtaposition.
Tode an.
And one that appears to have incited the gods of deduction within me to find their voices too. Oh, of course. Oh, mimicking. Okay. Oh, Iris is not like this at all. The strains of reasoning within me are playing now as a delightful duet. The melody sings a reunion of full nostalgia. Whilst the other is a morose theme about the great secret you're trying so desperately to conceal, Iris. She's turned as white as a sheet, and she's supposed to be the smarter of the two. So as usual, you've instantly seen to the very heart of the matter. And by the time my own brief performance is over, I feel sure this gentleman's song will reach its finale. So then, to Music Land, where all is sweetness and delicacy and harmony. Pray, do enjoy Herlock Sholm's latest Logic and Reasoning Spectacular! The Great Deduction. The game is afoot. Man's identity. Firstly, we consider the gentleman's nationality. Clearly, he's a German with no grasp of the English language. As evidenced by the Germanic song he sings and his apparent inability to understand when asked to desist. So, why is the man here at all and in such apparently high spirits? The answer, of course, Iris, is clearly known to you. Indeed, we need only follow the gaze of those bright young eyes to unravel the particular part of this mystery. The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the herbal tea. You obviously offer your German guest a cup of your latest herbal blend. The tea's delectable flavor has made the man's spirit soar and resulted in this joyful ditty tumbling incessantly from his lips. I eagerly await sampling the flavor myself, that I may join the fellow in a state of elation. Now, to the next question. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly to the city? As it happens, a number of years ago now, a certain gentleman of German origin engaged my services in solving a particularly delicate case. He required the retrieval of letters once sent to an acquaintance that might have proved problematic. In order to conceal his noble identity, he also arrived at my office in a mask. The gentleman's name was Wilhelm Gottfried Sigismund von Ornstein. What? The King of Germany. My memory serves, the mask worn by this gentleman is identical. Yes, there can be no question that mask belongs to the King of Germany. It would appear that His Majesty remembers the fine service I afforded him. He has, and has decided to show his face again, mask and all, in order to express his gratitude. A well-mannered monarch indeed, wouldn't you agree, my dear fellow? Oh, I'm loving every second of this. So the identity of this masked visitor is in fact my former client, the King of Germany. Indeed, his son is currently in London as well, enjoying the wonders of the Great Exhibition. The King of Germany. Girls, silence. Excuse me. Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Okay. Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Yes, you, young Iris. But your apparently inexplicable silence is unable to hide the truth. Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that knapsack. A five-pound note, I believe. I must say, as your compatriot, I'm deeply saddened. It would appear that you've allowed yourself to be bribed into silence by His Royal Highness, earning yourself some spending money in exchange for keeping quiet about the King's secret. And now the final piece of the puzzle. What is this secret you strive to hide with your silence, Iris? Ah, yes, we need only follow that brief involuntary twitch of your eyes to find the answer. You are attempting to abscond with that coffee cup! My favorite coffee cup, in fact. Or should I say, the handle of my favorite coffee cup. It appears that his high-spirited highness broke it in the midst of his hijinks. I always thought hijinks was spelled H-I-J-I-N-K-S. So having them split like that kind of threw me off. Which leads us to the sad truth. My favorite coffee cup has been broken by the King of Germany, and Iris, you tried to conceal it from me! I shall have a bill sent via governmental channels to the German royal family for its replacement. To hide the coffee cup. Thus concludes Herlock Sholm's great deduction of this painful puzzle.
Mit dem Schwarzbiergebot bodelt wie ein Feuerberg, den Schlund es mir verbrannt. Ach, Hopfen,
With your silence as well, the fellow's jovial warbling rather rings in the ears, does it not? Oh, okay, it's the record player back there, yeah. Mr. Sholmes? I must say something that does rather trouble me. Pray, Mr. Saddle, do tell! His Royal Highness doesn't appear to have moved a muscle since we arrived. Ah! And you haven't said a word either, Iris. If Mr. Sholmes has it all right, you might as well own up to it now. Your reasoning isn't entirely without substance, I must admit. And one other thing, Mr. Sholmes. You're another greatest, Mr. Naruto? Surely not. Well, I actually read the story of that case recently, the one you were just describing, and according to that at least, it wasn't the King of Germany, it was the King of Bohemia. Goodness, was it? Yes, that's quite true. Master Gotz, the prince, testified to that in court. In his words, I have come to see the great exhibition all the way from my home in Bohemia. I would ask you to keep that minor error to yourselves. It could easily become quite a scandal. I believe, Mr. Naruhodo,
Has art turned to, now to make some corrections to a number of minor errors that may have slipped in. Yes, even Mr. Sholmes is willing to admit he might be slightly wide of the mark this time. Although it's clear that Iris is definitely hiding something. We need to find out the truth behind this mysterious scene. But one truth is incontrovertible. My favorite coffee cup is no more. So, shall we embark again? On a joint presentation of Herlock Sholmes' Logic and Reasoning Spectacular. Course correction. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. Firstly, we consider that we're going through all this again, and I can speed it up. She's looking at the record player. So what? It's some mix of herbs that gives you the urge to sing? Goodness, I should like to try some. And I'd like to hear your singing, but this man, just how long does he intend to keep up with that tune, do you suppose? Record players don't play forever, you know. I think they just go until they reach the center of the record. Or is it the outside of the record? I don't know how record players work. Well, you don't know, I'm not gonna say I do. Ah! So I'm not sure what's actually responsible for the spirited singing. But I suspect the answer lies at the end of Iris's gaze. Okay, there we go.
Take that!
Gramophone is what it's called, okay. The real reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the gramophone. Indeed, for no well-bred gentleman would break into an obscure folk song when making a social call. In other words, this gentleman isn't singing at all. In fact, it would appear that the fellow is unconscious. And it's finally run out. Ah, the music seems to have stopped now. I ask you, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? Why would I have purchased a recording of that gibberish? How should I know? Well, never mind. On with the deduction. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly on the settee? And here we go back to the King of Germany stuff. I think it belongs to Kazuma, actually. Though we've all... one second. Although we've already established that it was actually the King of Bohemia. It seems Mr. Sholmes intends to persist with his Germany theory for some reason. Come to think of it, the young prince was wearing a mask as well, wasn't he? Master Gotz? The boy, whom you had in tears? Don't remind me, or anyone else. Do you suppose all members of the aristocracy, of mainland Europe wear masks? I'm sure they do. Well, probably anyway. Point is, that mask doesn't belong to any king. No, that's right, as we well know, because we can identify the true owner of this mask.
Take that! Yes, there can be no question. That mask belongs to Kazuma Asuki. In other words, my memory is sublimely unreliable. Only you could try to make that sound positive. Kazuma's mask has been languishing on this metal chest for several days, though it doesn't explain why the gentleman is wearing it now. But it is now a simple matter to determine our guest's true identity. After all, the gentleman is unconscious. We only excuse ourselves in advance, gently lift the mask and peer beneath it. And it's Mikitoba. I don't believe it. Ah! Father! I'm afraid, Mr. Sato, you must be mistaken. No! I think not, Mr. Sholmes. Now she's taking over. Then would appear our logic and reasoning has once again revealed the truth. This mysterious visitor? Yes! He's my unconscious father, Eugene Mikitoba. Logic and reasoning? Or just looking insane? Eugene Mikitoba. Solved. Alright. Repeated dialogue, repeated dialogue, repeated dialogue. Can't skip it for some reason. No, she's hiding something in one of her hands. I want to say it's her right hand? I know. I'm not even sure if we've seen any bank notes here in Britain at all, have we? But anyway, Father would never have paid money for Iris' silence. He certainly seems like the silent type himself, though, judging by his present state. There must be some other reason for Iris' silence, I suppose. Perhaps what Iris is trying so hard not to give away with her eyes is something entirely different. Okay, no, so, never mind. It's not anything in her hand. No, okay, it just went over and that doesn't seem to be it. It's not the knapsack, that much we know for sure. Metal chest? It's open? This metal chest, it contains important documents, doesn't it? Yes, details of all cases Mr. Sholmes has worked on over the years. Written up by Iris' father, if I'm remembering correctly. Iris insists that the chest is kept locked at all times. She never once shown me inside, and yet it's open. It's very clearly open. Well, its contents are invaluable to her, I suppose. It's entirely irreplaceable. But look at it now. The catch is unlocked for once. Ah! So it is. That's hard to ignore. Very. I've never seen that chest unlocked before, in all the time we've been staying here at Baker Street. Take that! Yes, the reason for your mutant is concealed inside that metal chest. An excellent observation, for upon closer inspection, there is something different about the chest's appearance. It's kept locked at all times, yet now, the catch is open! Evidently, this has something to do with your refusal to speak, Iris. But it's a similar matter to incite you to speak, I'm sure. I merely need to open this chest. Here we go. No! Hurley, don't!
dead. He's dead. He's dead. Never. Oh, Hurley, I told you not to open it. Let's just open it from the side so we don't hit the fucking boxing glove. So we found your voice now, Iris. Ah! In other words, what just happened clearly reveals the truth. Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is... This is somewhat different to the usual dance of deduction you perform with Mr. Sholmes, isn't it? Well, he's left me alone on the ballroom floor, so I'm gonna have to dance this next part solo. Anyway, I need to get to the bottom of this, for my own peace of mind. Now then, Iris isn't usually the silent type, so... You mean you don't actually know the answer yet? Despite knowing that knowing point of the finger? Mr. Sato? Sometimes a man needs to point his finger first and think later. So many things I just want to take screenshots of. Oh, well, if you say so. I think we'd better examine Iris more closely to try and rescue the situation then. Okay, so we are actually looking at her this time. Okay, now we can actually see. Oh, what's this key? What is this key? That's a key she's holding. Look, I'm sure that wasn't in her hands before, was it? No, you're quite right. It's appeared as if by magic. That's strange. A big old iron key. Where did that materialize from?
Take that!
Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is that key behind your back! Ah! When Mr. Sholmes was thrown into the air before... Just before you called out to try to stop him, you slipped something out of your mouth. Did she? I didn't notice that. That something is the key now in your hand. No doubt the key to the chest. I thought what she was doing was, it was just dramatic anime arm movements and stuff like that, that, like, Ace Attorney is known for. I didn't think she was hiding anything. Or trying to slip something into her hand. You're so clever, Runo! So now it becomes clear. Thanks to Mr. Sholmes' graphic demonstration, we can well imagine what happened here. But... Professor Migatoba also opened that metal chest, only to be punched into the air. And land sprawled here on the settee. But wait! That doesn't explain all the facts! What about the stylish scarf? And the cup of tea? And above all, why would he be wearing Kazuma-sama's mask? Well, for those curious details, I can think of only one explanation. Certainly an unbelievable miracle took place in this room. Basically what I'm thinking happened was he was already drinking the tea and he decided, I'm gonna see what's inside this chest. Was launched up into the air, fell into the couch, still holding the cup of tea. The cover that was on, because that's clearly the cover that was over the chest first, just kind of landed on him. And Iris, not wanting to upset Susato, just kind of put the mask over his face and just kind of like, okay, like maybe Susato won't be mad at me for knocking out her father if I just do this for a bit. Isn't that right, Iris? Consider how the room was arranged before this whole painful experience took place. When Professor Migatoba opened the chest, completely unaware of what awaited him inside, the mask was flung into the air just as he was, only to land neatly on his face when it fell back down. And the teacup's journey through the air ended where it caught on the unconscious professor's finger. You mean to say the stylish scarf? Is actually just a tablecloth. This is the great detective's office, after all, a place of miraculous deductions. Would you expect anything less? Yes, you're right. It happened exactly as you said. Brilliant, Runo! Thus concludes Ryunosuke Naruhodo's great deduction of this punchy puzzle. So then, why don't I make a fresh pot of tea for us all?
Objection!
An objection from Schultz. An admirable performance, Mr. Naruhodo. But the final act of the show is, there. You rather miss everything of importance. Mr. Sholmes? If you would cast your mind back to my earlier deduction. Yeah, she does seem unusually happy the second, Ryunosuke finished. Iris, clearly you're hiding a great secret. She is? From the look on her face. Mr. Sholmes must be right. Whatever the great secret is, the cat isn't out of the bag yet. So I put it to you again. You are attempting to abscond with that coffee cup! She definitely wants to abscond with the handle, at least. It really is a shame about Mr. Sholmes' cup. It must have been smashed when Professor Migatoba opened the chest. Oh dear, so many things seem to have been broken here. But now that the deduction has taken a different direction, Iris doesn't seem to be trying to hide the broken cup anymore. In other words, her great secret is something else. Let's put our observational skills to work here one final time then. We're attempting to abscond with a coffee cup. Coffee cup. Is that really just a banknote in her backpack? Surely this time at last the knapsack is going to be the answer. It's Van Zeke's records! I'm really not sure why you're so intent on showing Iris' bag to be complicit in the events. Because it's a sizable bag! Big enough to carry things around, Mr. Naruhodo. That's what bags are for. So, the knapsack might never see the limelight. I really wouldn't like to say. Hold on, can I actually examine this down here? I can't look at that specifically, and I can't pause. I'm actually looking all around the room. I'm looking all around, and the only thing that's examinable is the coffee cup and the knapsack. At least that I can see. This is probably wrong, but it's the only thing I can think of right now. Yeah, okay, that's wrong. Okay, can we skip this? I was wrong. Can we skip this and move on? But what else is there? Oh my god, are we gonna... I'm checking the background. Oh wait, is it under the plate? There it is! That just hit me! Yeah, that worked. It's the Van Ziek's case file.
Take that!
I mean, autopsy report or whatever. I didn't even see that.
You're attempting to abscond with that case file!
Iris, as you very well know, nothing escapes the attention of a great detective.
Oh no!
We visited Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory earlier today, and Dr. Gorey informed us that the autopsy report of Clint Van Zieks had gone missing.
Clint Van Zieks.
Yes, I do seem to recall.
That some years ago, I asked to see the report in question.
You were with me, weren't you, Iris? She stole it, not Sholmes. Hi. You mean it was you, Iris? So those papers you have there... I'm sorry.
Oh!
To hide the case file. Solved.
Deduction complete. Elementary.
Oh, I didn't get to capture it before it went completely dark. I just really like that picture. I'm probably gonna make it one of my computer backgrounds.
I would like to have a thought I could have predicted the booby-trapped chest, but it caught me completely off guard. I was very nearly late, the late consulting detective Herlock Sholmes.
I'm sorry, Hurley. So you mean this autopsy report really is... Yes, I took it from the lab, even though I knew it was very important. Was there something in that troubled you, Iris? Not exactly something that troubled me. Something I'd been looking for. When I saw this report, when I saw the writing in it, I knew it was Daddy's.
Oh.
Oh no. Your father's writing? What do you mean? Iris? Must be something that's hard for her to talk about.
Forgive me for interrupting, my dear fellows. Mr. Sholmes, what is it? I feel as though the poor unconscious gentleman on this settee has been somewhat forgotten. Father! Perhaps we should find our guests somewhere more peaceful to rest. Mr. Naruto?
Yes?
Would you be so kind as to lend him your bed? We must do our very best to make him comfortable, I feel.
Oh, yes, of course. I'll help you carry him up.
So will I. No, I can manage it out, thank you. You have tea to enjoy. We wouldn't want Iris's brew to stew.
Because there's no better way to make the professor comfortable than dragging him upstairs like a trunk. I wonder, perhaps that was deliberate. Maybe Mr. Sholmes is making himself scarce to give Iris a chance to talk more freely. He must use his opportunity to talk with Iris. And find out what's going on here. What was that? Oh. Yeah, my room is a mess. So that was an empty bottle of Brisk. Would you like to tell us, Iris, about your father? I'm sure I told you before, didn't I? That Daddy used to be Hurley's partner. Yes, and that notes about all the cases they solved together were kept inside that metal chest. That's right! Hurley told me, you see. He said that Daddy's somewhere far away now, so we can't meet. That's one way of describing it. Then when I secretly unlocked the chest and read through the papers inside, I started to build up a picture in my head of what Daddy must be like. Well, that's only natural. You're just like any other girl of your age. I read that Daddy was a professor of medical science, so I studied and took my degree too. Well, that's only natural, I suppose. In that respect, you're not quite like any other girl of your age, though. But there was one thing I could never find out. Daddy's name. Ah! His name wasn't anywhere on any of, wasn't anywhere on any of the notes that he'd made about his work with Hurley. But then one day, that's what happened, is it? When you saw this autopsy report, you finally managed to work it out. Is that right? Yes. So what was that, so it was the handwriting in the report that caught her eye. The autopsy report. When I saw the writing on that report, I could hardly believe it. I knew that handwriting. I thought to myself, because it was the same as the writing you'd seen on your father's case notes. Exactly. I was desperate to compare the two properly. I need to see them side by side. I asked the doctor in the laboratory, but I was told I couldn't take the report away. And even worse, I was told that that was the first and last time we'd be allowed even to look at it there. So you decided to steal it. When I compared the autopsy report with the case notes I had here, there was no doubt. The handwriting was exactly the same. It was Daddy's. And the signature of the coroner at the bottom of the autopsy report read Dr. John H. Wilson. So that's how I finally found out. I learned Daddy's name at last. I see. Ever since then, I've called myself Iris Wilson. And that's also when I had the brilliant idea of writing stories all about Daddy's exciting times with Hurley. I decided there and then that I'd write the adventures of Herlock Sholmes. Oh, Iris, I had no idea the stories had quite such a deep personal significance for you. I can see why the autopsy report was so important to her now. And why she was prepared to break the law to get her hands on it. So are we going to tell her now, or are we going to wait? I must apologize, Iris. This is really all my fault. Hurley? I made a promise, you see, that until the time was right, I'd keep the details about your father a secret. I know. I've been very naughty. I'll take the autopsy report back to Dr. Gorey and apologize, I promise. Yes, we'll go together, I think. Then, let me look at after it until we get there. Clint's autopsy report has been entered in the court record. Well, let's look at it now. I'm hitting the court record button as fast as I can. There we go. Okay, Clint Van Zieks, age 33. Nationality British. 31st of May between 9 p.m. and midnight. So there's a 3-hour gap there. Death from a single stab wound to the heart. Other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. Okay, so it was... I guess you could argue it was the sword. Recent scarlet ink marks... ink stains visible on the little and ring finger of the right hand, but no document in corresponding ink was found. Recent scarlet ink. Oh, there's a third note. I didn't see that. Excuse me. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. No internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. Well, I mean, other than a stab wound to the heart. I must go and water my herbs, I think. I'll see you all later. Poor Iris. She must be feeling awful. I know Mr. Sholmes is here for her, but still. Ah! What? How? What's the meaning of this, Mr. Sholmes? Mr. Sholmes? Oh, dear me. So, you've noticed, I see. What? Notice what? But that would mean... What on earth's the matter, Miss Usato? You've turned as white as a sheet. It's the autopsy report, Mr. Naruhodo. The one from 10 years ago. The writing isn't Dr. Wilson's at all. What? Because I know this writing very well. This writing isn't, it's my father's. What? What? Professor Migatoba's? Well, now I'm confused. So, Iris is actually, Iris is actually Migatoba's father and Susato's sister? I'm very confused, and I think I need confirmation from the game. And now you know, my dear fellows. No! I don't know anything! What on earth does all this mean, Mr. Sholmes? Because the idea that's slowly forming in my mind is just too extraordinary to believe. Please, you have to explain. Iris is 10 years old. So it's definitely possible. Fuck! Okay. So, this autopsy report was actually penned by Professor Mikatoba then? But that makes no sense. It's not possible, surely. Not possible, my dear fellow. Pray, take a deep breath and think again. Yes, you're right. In some ways, it actually makes a great deal of sense. It does? Excuse me. 10 years ago, when Father returned to Japan after his extended study tour in Britain. And prior to his return, where was Dr. Mikatoba engaged? Ah, of course! He was an assistant in Dr. Wilson's laboratory, learning about forensic science. And as an assistant, he would have aided with the dissection work, making detailed notes, which would be assembled into the full autopsy report. Once the work was complete, the head coroner would check the contents and put his signature on the document. In other words, the only writing of Dr. Wilson's in the report would be his signature at the end. I see. Sarah's got the wrong end of the stick, you mean? She saw that and assumed the whole report had been written by Dr. John H. Wilson. Which is very understandable, of course. What a complicated situation. The report is signed by Dr. John H. Wilson, who carried out the procedure, though Professor Mikatoba actually penned the report. Your partner. Thinking about it, most of what we know about you, Mr. Sholmes, comes from the published stories of your exploits. Yes, The Adventures of Herlock Sholmes, written by Iris. And we really have no way of knowing what's fact and what's fiction. Most troubling for you, my dear fellow, I'm sure. So what about this? So what about this supposed partner of yours? Does he really exist or not? Ah, you've come straight to the point, I see. And please come straight to the answer. I believe Iris explained it in one of her installments. He was a trusted comrade, and the only person I could truly have called a friend. And did this partner of yours truly make a record of all your cases? Are his notes really stored inside that metal chest? Absolutely, my dear madame! Absolutely! Which is why Mikatoba tried to open it. So where's your partner now? We rarely meet. You see, he lives on the other side of the world. But this autopsy report and the records of all your old cases were penned by the same hand. And if the autopsy report was written, though not signed, by your famous partner, there would only be one logical conclusion. Pray impress me. Your partner would have to be Eugene Mikotoba. In other words, Miss Usato's father. Upon my word, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? You are coming along wonderfully. You have hit upon the method at last. You finally grasp the art of deduction. You mean to say... Allow me to introduce you to my great friend and partner, Mikotoba. Professor Mikotoba? Sholmes and Mikotoba. Does this mean that you're the real Dr. Wilson? No, my dear. I'm still my old self, Eugene Mikotoba, your father. Oh, of course. This is obviously too much for Susato-san to take in. I must say, though, while my old friend has attained worldwide celebrity as a great mystery solver, is the greatest mystery of all. I still remember the first time we met. Pray remind me. When was it again, Mikotoba? 16 years ago, Sholmes. Yes, quite! 16 years ago. I just arrived from London with Sashiro and Genji. I was in search of lodgings close to the hospital, some comfortable rooms at a reasonable price. But rents are devilishly high in that particular area. That's right, so I decided I need someone to share lodgings and the expense, and was fortunate enough to be introduced to Sholmes, who found himself in a similar situation. I was a cow fellow back then, a mere shadow of the great detective you see before you now. I was working at the hospital's chemical laboratory at the time, indulging my curiosities for little game. And the situation of our cohabitation led to us pursuing cases together, you see. Hard to believe, it was a mere 6 years. We had a great many adventures. But in the last year of Mikotoba's stay in Britain, that most infamous of cases presented itself. The case with which you've become rather familiar yourselves, the Professor killings. After the trial, Sashiro and I were summoned back home. Hardly surprising, given the circumstances. So there you have it. And as you know, all the details recorded by my trusty chronicler remain in that metal chest. This is just amazing. Professor Mikotoba really is Mr. Sholmes' famous partner. Father. Goodness, my dear. What a cutting look. She's a Sholmes fanboy. She would have loved to hear that you were his partner the entire time. As your daughter, I'm very proud to learn that you were the great detective's great partner. But nevertheless, there's another mystery that I really must ask you to explain now. And that is? You know very well what it is. The unresolved matter of Iris's father. Ah, of course! I'd almost forgotten about that one. I should have seen this coming, I suppose. Who did you fuck? Iris told us that all the notes about the great detective's adventures that are in that metal chest were written by her father. Isn't that correct, Mr. Sholmes? That is indeed what I told young Iris. But if you're Mr. Sholmes' partner, father, and you wrote all those case notes, then Iris' father must be you. Ah! Upon my words, Mr. Sato. You are coming along wonderfully as well. You too have hit upon the method at last. You finally grasped the art of deduction. What? What you've always told me, father, is that my mother died when I was born 16 years ago. and you left me in grandmother's care whilst you embarked on your study tour of Britain, and I've always accepted that. But all this about Iris.
Oh, there it is. Susan's ice-cold stare. No, now hold on a minute. It was very complicated. I mean, it's really not what you think.
Then perhaps you'd like to explain exactly what it is.
Oh, she's gonna... Oh, shit. There it is. Now the eyes go from ice-cold to red-hot just before she... I would run. No, really, you've got the wrong end of the stick, Sholmes. Say something, man.
That's quite enough, my fiery fellows! Mr. Sholmes, when did he get all dressed up?
Whilst I don't like to interrupt the exciting exploration of the past, Mikatoba and I have an urgent matter that requires a short excursion.
But it's very late, Mr. Sholmes. Where must you go?
Why, my dear madame, is that not obvious? My partner and I must pursue our natural enemies. So, get your coat, Mikatoba. The game is afoot. But Sholmes,
I really must give Susanoo a full explanation, I think.
Later, my dear fellow, later. Our carriage waits downstairs already.
You haven't changed one iota, have you? I mean, really, I visited home after 10 long years. And when I opened that chest in a fit of nostalgia, I quite inexplicably passed out. As if that wasn't enough, when I eventually regained consciousness, I plunged straight into all of this. Father, please. Go with Mr. Sholmes now.
What?
I've no doubt that whatever happened, you were acting in everyone's best interests. I trust you, completely. Susanoo. And sending the great detective and his great partner off on renewed adventures together is more than I could have hoped for in my wildest dreams.
Very well then. We'll speak again later. So, I believe your own work is done for the day. I wish you the best of luck tomorrow.
Yes, Naruto. Good luck in battle, and in reaching a decision. A decision? About whether to go back to Japan, I suppose?
So much happened that day that I barely knew what to do with myself.
I'm just increasing the volume so you can better hear the narration.
It would only be later that I'd come to realize how amidst the chaos I'd unleashed were all the clues I needed to finally unearth the truth. And that all the turmoil was necessary to give me the resolve to see everything through.
God damn it, another almost 4-hour stream! Alright, so the next time we'll be playing Great Ace Attorney Chronicles will be next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Assume all goes well with what I do before these streams, where we will be heading to the second trial phase of Case 4. But in between now and then, you can catch me playing Pokemon Crystal on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, assuming all goes well, assuming nothing unscheduled happens. Yeah. We do have Fly, but we're going to be traveling on foot back down to New Bark City, and if we have time, we'll make our way east of New Bark. Also, again, if you have any spare cash, I have put links in the description that lead to articles that list charities that are helping Ukraine and its refugees. If you have any spare cash, please consider donating to one or more of those charities. And, yeah. I'll see you guys later with something else.